Hello, hello, Burak. And everybody else, of course. How's everyone doing? Just kicking off this Whip Wednesday with some chill music in the background. I'm still finishing up like the setup as well. Bear with me for a moment. Right. Hello, Fair. Hello, Abdu. Hello, Top G. Good to see you all here. Hope you're all doing well. Excited to see you all here. Might as well. How many more do I have to prepare for? Just a couple more. Okay, we're gonna keep it as is and we're gonna do it live. Let's switch it on over. It's not broken. Wow, look at that. The reason why I'm surprised because I had to like redo the whole setup because I had to give back like all the work from home stuff that I had from Playground. So they came and picked that up. So I'm back on my old school screens instead of 4K. I'm back on 2K now. And I was actually surprised that like OBS like didn't completely just like, you know, like shit itself. So I'm happily surprised because normally, I don't know, like before when I changed it, like it just like would screw up like the whole setup. So I'm surprised that it doesn't do it. Like, I'm not gonna complain about it either, but yes, happy about it. Well, it's a little bit low though. Did it change? Guess so. Hello V, hello Lily, hello Slate, hello Leia. Oh my god, Leia, I got that professional tag in YouTube as well. 3D tech environment artist, let's go. I see you comment your comments on LinkedIn all the time, so you're out there on the social media grind. Love to see it. Love to see it. Let's go. How are you? Everything okay? Yeah. Doing okay. So started saying farewell to a couple of people at work. Yeah, it's I honestly feel good about it. Like I don't really have any regrets. I am just excited for like the next chapter, right? So yeah, I mean it's always a little bit sad. It's always mixed feelings, right? I don't want to leave those people behind that I spent like the last 2 years with on this project, right? And I don't necessarily want to leave the project behind too. But I mean, it is what it is, right? Like sometimes you have these moments, and this is gonna sound so dramatic, but without intent, that you just have to prioritize yourself and like your priorities in life rather than like a company or whatever else is going on, right? And I feel like the pieces were just falling into place where it was that time for me to do so. So we're gonna see how it's gonna work out because now basically what it comes down to is I need to make it work. We're gonna see if I can make it happen. It's gonna be interesting. It gives me the option to basically play around with a bunch of things. Well, like basically explore like sides that I've never been able to explore, right? So it gives me like carte blanche on that a little bit too. Of course, there's like stuff would be on extent that I definitely will keep up with, but it gives me time to do other stuff too. Maybe even pick up a hobby here and there. But yeah, overall feeling good about it. Tomorrow will be my last day. So we will have leaving drinks as well, which is like a tradition that they do here. We go to like one of the local pubs, do like a farewell drinks for everyone, for all the people that are leaving. So that's gonna be cool. Looking forward to that. Yeah. That's about it, honestly. Like I'm really feeling. Oh my god, my sentence structure is gonna be all over the place today, isn't it? So I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm feeling pretty good about it. It's just now we just have to do the waiting game because we have the team challenges first. So that's gonna be like taking up all my time, and then after the team challenges, then we're gonna be moving. we are looking for like apartments and all that kind of stuff. So we have some help on that side where people are going to like multiple viewings for us. So we're already exploring that thing. And it seems to be going pretty well. I'm also excited to just be in a house that is not shit, you know? Like, I don't know. I mean, you can't really see it, right? But like it is the stuff in the UK is just pretty bare bones, like for what you get, for the most part. In the places that I lived in, which is two, so don't take my word for it. Compared to like if you look at some other places with different costs of living, like you seem to get like more in return. But anyway, that's a different topic. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much. Chloe's coming in. Happy Wednesday. Let's go. What is it? Hump day, right? Like when it's like the hump of the week, like we're almost over it. I guess we're over it. And then hello, Guillaume. Hello, Marcos. Good to see you both. How are you both doing? Burak is gonna start like adding like all the how would you call it? Like a tagline in the name as well. Everyone's just gonna be showing up with like environment artist in the tag now. I guess on Discord, unless if you're doing Discord content, right? Then that would make sense. If you're not really doing it, then maybe a little bit less important. But hey, still cool to see it though. Have a good time traveling? Yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll just be moving, right? So we're gonna be moving in beginning of December, so we're still like quite a ways out for that, which is gonna be good. I am honestly looking forward to like the immediate future where I just have like a bunch of time. And I think the main priority with that time is I kind of want to figure out how I'm gonna fill it meaningfully without creating a system for me that's gonna cause me to like do too much of one thing, right? So I need to relearn how to take time for myself, maybe do a hobby here and there or something like that, kind of pick that back up too, while I'm also doing like the work stuff. Because otherwise, it's just gonna be work. I don't want to be doing that all the time necessarily either. So it's time to find that better balance. Yeah, but I see like a bunch of people coming in. First of all, lovely to have you here. I'm Timothy. I'm a senior environment artist in the games industry. If you have any questions, any at all about games, about I don't know, maybe you're stuck with work or anything like that, feel free to ask them in the chat and we can chat about it too. And then in just like half an hour or something like that, we'll jump into some feedback from our lovely community. We're going to be doing that in a little bit. We don't really have too many people for today, which is actually quite nice. So I know that was not intentional, but thank you so much for doing so. Not me today, sorry. Are you working on Let Them Trade? That looks so cool. I've not seen that. I need a motivational quote. The job search is killing me. I don't have a motivational quote. You can do it. You know? Let's go. Jeez, let me open a window here. But yeah, I know that the work search is draining. But yeah, keep hanging in there. Keep hanging in there, Zoe. That'll do. Ooh, get your ass to work, Slate is saying. Okay, so motivational. Maybe not the kind that everyone appreciates, but hey. It's kind of weird. Like the best motivation that always worked for me was always someone saying that I couldn't do something, right? And I would then just do it out of spite. Not like, I mean, not anyone could say it. Like it's a person that I like value in my life and them saying like, hey, you can't do that. And I would be like, oh my God, I'll show you. If like a random person comes up to me and says like, hey, you can't do this, I'm going to be like, okay, cool. Yeah. Also, not the healthiest kind of like energy to take from, you know, like that spiteful energy. Like saying I did work on it. It was a really fun project. I learned a lot from it. Yeah, that's awesome. Nike, just do it. Yeah. Yeah, maybe that works for some people, you know? I feel like I've had my fair few pairs of like Nike shoes, and then I mean, I'm not in the healthiest shape, as you can tell, so I don't think that worked for me. Spite and fine, I'll do it myself are the #1 motivators. Spite, in my case, yes. Fine, I'll do it myself. Not really. God, I hate that feeling. Not gonna lie, because I'm always like, well, okay, so in a professional context, right? I always get so frustrated. Like, okay, sometimes it's easier to do something yourself, but also there's so many ways where it's just like, hey, look, first of all, not my responsibility. Okay, I'm just gonna escalate it to someone else, and then someone else is gonna take care of it. But for some reason, I applied to loads of studios, and they all wait to reject me on the same day. Oh shit, that is savage, though. But okay, this is gonna be weird. Gonna be weird. But that's also good because then you get like one bad day, and then the next day you get to wake up and just be like, hey, look, that was yesterday. It's no longer today, you know? Silver lining kind of thing. There's always something that can make a silver lining out, right? Yeah, it's not easy. Keep it hanging in there, Zoe. Do, 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 do. Daniel, hello, hello. Let me open OBS as well, because Twitch overlay is not doing too great in keeping up with the questions from what I see. Okay, so let me move this here. Maybe they just rented the same AI system that responds to the email on the same day. Yeah, but AI systems are smart, you know? They wouldn't do that. Come on. Come on. I'm excited to see Team Challenge stuff. Hell yeah! Me too. So myself, Sunny, and Evelyn, we have internal bets going on how many. Well, we have two bets going on, right? Like one about the amount of teams that we're going to be making, and one about the amount of applications that we're going to be receiving for this month. It looks highly likely that we might have underestimated in one and overestimated in the other. We'll see. We'll see. Did I sign up, by the way? Just want to double check. If you got an email, then that's fine. You should have gotten an email. Which I totally forgot to... That I did that. That I set that up. Well, if you got an email, Route 1, then you know that you're... What? Like... There's no more that I can do. There's not a set amount yet. How many you're letting in? Nope. Nope, nope, nope. I don't think that would be... Well, we're not at that scale yet where that would even matter. If that makes sense. Because, like, right now, the way that the system is set up is that... it's... Well, the way that financially it's set up now is that it's an equilibrium, right? I think the only thing that we might get into trouble with at a certain point is that we have so many people that the source control company, which is now Unity, where they might be like, hey, look, you guys are running like a large size studio right now, like every 3 months. What are we doing? Like, what is happening here? I think we might get to that point. And I hope that we can then work something out. We haven't gotten to that point just yet, which is good. But I'm not gonna tempt fate, you know. That's the only thing that I could see happening. But yeah, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Barack is asking, is there a stream tomorrow or like a little voice chat for that? Nope. That will be private between myself, Sunny, and Evelyn. And then you will receive an email for that. Because, yeah, in terms of speed, we have to be relatively quick, or we want to be relatively quick in terms of letting people, or like forming teams and letting people in, and the process is quite messy. And I think for some people it might be what would I say, like quite insensitive, if that makes sense, or quite objective, where we go through stuff really quickly. Hello, Tom. How are you doing, Tom? Kowalinsky coming in with a question. Thank you so much for the question. Do recruiters care if the portfolio piece was made based on someone's concept art or not, or do they look at the technical skills? No. I mean, if you think about it in terms of what the games industry will do, right? You as an environment artist, you come in and usually you get a concept art that you have to recreate anyway. The only difference there is if you work from a concept art, you are basically showcasing your production skills, right? Which means like how do you transfer something that you get into 2D and how do you translate that into 3D, right? That is one skill set. Then we have another skill set if you don't use a concept art, like how good are you coming up with your own ideas and how visually interesting are they, right? So those are like two different skill sets. And as an artist, you kind of need to have both. So the way that I usually do this is I look for an interesting concept that I can use as a starting point and then build on top of it, right? Because then I feel like I get the best of both worlds. Obviously now I don't really approach it that way. I just do the stuff that's fun, right? Because I'm no longer in like the race to prove my credibility as like a production artist, right? But in the beginning, I would kind of do it that way. I would take something that already has like good bones and then build on top of it. Hello, Mateo. Good to see ya. Good to see ya. Lovely to have you here. How are you doing? I know, but you're having a panic attack now in case I'm not signed up? No, you are. You are. What aspects would disqualify someone from joining the challenge? So there's one big but very vague one, which is quality, right? But quality breaks down into like several factors. I am personally really interested in if you showcase that you can do game art workflows, right? Whether that is like a full environment or a single prop, I don't necessarily care. The quality even of it, I don't necessarily care about necessarily either, but I want to see you execute on what a game art pipeline is, right? If you know how to make a single asset with high to low poly workflow, and if you know a little bit about trim sheets, maybe you do a little bit of sculpting or something like that. That's usually what I look for. So that's roughly the way that I break that down. But with art, obviously, there's no way of saying like we can look at the technical factors, right? But then sometimes you have people who are like outside of that box, right? Because sometimes people don't post breakdowns, for example, right? Which is still pretty common, which kind of baffles me. Please post your breakdowns. But let's say, for example, you just have the art of a person. You can already tell if they have the technical know-how and the ability to make something like that to a good degree by just looking at the art, right? You can kind of look at things visually and see like, oh, this is baked, this is made with trim sheets. Okay, they kind of know this. Okay, they're in, right? Whereas sometimes that might also work in their well, against them. Because sometimes people are already on the edge of me being like, I don't think they are ready yet to join this challenge. But then the thing that would actually support that to to a certain degree is, okay, maybe I'm not what's the best way of saying this? Maybe I'm not convinced by the work just yet. However, if you then post breakdowns of it, then it can be like, oh, okay, I see that the breakdowns and the technical know-how and the artistic ability behind it is good. It's just that the quality didn't really showcase it, right? So it gets very murky really quick. But yeah. Basically what it comes down to is show how you did stuff, right? Show how you made it, show your artistic abilities and all that kind of stuff, like show it in breakdowns. Because otherwise, and this, I think the way that I approach it is sort of similar to what studios do as well, right? Amazing, good to know, because I haven't updated my portfolio in 2 years, but still worked on with AAA titles. That's what I'm scared of, because my portfolio at that level is not visible. Well, yeah, there's also like a scan. This is where it gets difficult, right? I don't know, I can't really speak to your specific case, right? But let's say we have a person who works in the industry, but then all the stuff that's on their portfolio is just not good enough to be in a team challenge. Then I can't let them in because I can't visually see that there is some like visual proof there, right? So that's where it gets really difficult. Sometimes you have people that just joined the industry or whatever, or they worked for a company, and then they don't really have the work there yet to showcase like some of the stuff that they've done there. And their portfolio up until that point is not good enough to let them in. So there's a whole bunch of people on the spectrum, right? But yeah, I tend to believe that we're more lenient than not. Bum, bum. Let's see. Does it make me more anxious to join? To know I could be rejected? I mean, you can also see it as like you can also see it as like this is a low bar, you know? If you get rejected from like a team challenge, that's not too bad. It's a good indication that if it matters more, let's say like a job that you've been applying for, right? That is something that has like more stakes compared to like the stuff that we do, right? But yeah. I feel like it would be nice to be better. This is also like a thing. This is the sort of conundrum that we as artists have to deal with, right? Is that for the longest time, I'll speak about myself for a little bit, but I think like a lot of people will resonate with this. For the longest time, you're just in your bubble. And just being like, okay, this is what I'm gonna be doing. This is what I'm working towards. And the only person that you can basically ask feedback to is yourself, right? So at that point, your only point of reference is you, and then maybe if you go to ArtStation or whatever. But that is also to your detriment to a certain degree, because if you never test your skills or your portfolio in real life, right? Which basically means like you never apply to a job or you never apply to a challenge or whatever, you never really get to get that industry feedback, right? Because what sometimes happens is that we are our own worst critic. And I've talked to so many people about this where I just told them like, just apply to everything. It doesn't matter. Just apply, see what comes back, right? And if after a certain point you're still getting rejected and whatever, then you just keep on the grind, you know? Keep getting better until you get that yes. But yeah. Hello, designer. Zoe is saying, I was rejected the last time and survived. It's all good, guys. Yes. Yeah. And also, like, if you were to get rejected, right? Then feel free to send me a message and we can talk about it. Route 1 is also saying, I got rejected the first time when I tried to join the team challenge, and then I worked on my portfolio and now done 2. Yeah. Yeah, you've done amazing. You've done amazing, Route 1. And you're not the only one, right? There's probably a bunch of people that tried to do the same thing and then got rejected for the team challenge. It's like your first little benchmark that you can do, right? With like lower stakes. Mine's the other way around though. What do you mean, Zoe? Did you get accepted first and then rejected after? Hello, Costas. Dude, it's been so long. It's good to see you here, man. How are you doing? Be curious. What happened there, Zoe? Yeah. All right. You did indeed? That's interesting. That makes me curious why we did that. Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. I do know that there was one time where what we did is we had the bar set too low, and then in a challenge we cranked it up for the next one. So yeah, maybe that happened at that time. Because we do keep tweaking like the bar of entry, right? Because we basically every time we do a team challenge, what happens is that we look at the results, right? Like just visually. That's our first step. And then we gather all the feedback from all the judges and all the mentors and all that kind of stuff. And then we go through all that feedback. And then we see, let me see if we can distill some of like our thoughts into the systems again, right? Because sometimes we feel that the outcome of the challenge was like too low for the visual bar that we want to set for the challenge. So then we just look at the people that we let in, and then we see like, okay, we can kind of see where we have to raise the level a little bit to then get more credible people into the challenge, right? So it's a constant tweaking. Will this team challenge have a level up at the bar as well? So here's the thing, like it gets tweaked quite a lot, right? But we don't really have like a set level. We try to somewhat maintain the same-ish level, I guess. But the issue with that is that we get a vastly different pool of people every time. Of course, there's people that wanna try like every time, right? Which is fair. And we have our regulars too, which is freaking amazing. But yeah, it's kind of hard to keep it somewhat consistent. For example, what I can already tell is that this time around, we have way more industry professionals joining the challenge. So what do we do in that case, right? Because that's also going to skew like the team setup too, right? So it's an interesting challenge that we have going on in the back end, like all times. Also saying, "Oh, good man, work is crazy right now, so not online or anything." Yeah, best of luck to you, dude. Yeah, I had the feeling that was gonna happen, which is partly the reason why I'm not there. Yeah. Zoe saying, "I'm not mad about it though, because of anything. I was actually employed back then anyway." Yeah, no, I don't think you were mad about it. It's also like we try to do the best for the teams, right? So that means like tweaking the challenge and the parameters like always, because if we stop doing that, then it's gonna get chaotic. Yeah, I assumed it was not that bad or anything. It was just, yeah. We have gearing up. Let's go. I'm curious to see what's gonna come out of it, Costas. Like, got some really good people working there, and I'm really curious to see what's gonna happen when we get like the teaser coming out. Which I don't know freaking when that's gonna happen, but I'm looking forward to it. Zoe saying, I got lucky on my first challenge because a few people had to leave, though no fault of their own. So it's just me and a few other people on it. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and that's also again one of those systems that we refined over time, right? Because just to give an example, and this is stuff that like I've never really talked about, right? But in the back end, what we do now is we also build a waiting list of people, which means that we have people that can replace the people that have to drop out for whatever reason, because that always happens. So now we've built a system against it. Because that was one of the bigger issues that we had before, where people just they had to leave because of other commitments or whatever happened. So we had to have like a list of people that we can then like filter in, right? But where do you pull those people from, right? Do you think finishing a community challenge and posting it in your portfolio shows recruiters that you can work with a team better than others? So we have gotten probably over 10 people reach out now that have participated in the team challenge and have directly gotten a job through like a team challenge. Because if you think about the landscape out there, right? What is happening is that artists just working by themselves, they will showcase to a certain degree like a good quality of skill level, right? Because everyone is doing that. That's a given for any artist out there. However, if you want to stand out, you have to think outside the box and do some other stuff, right? If you can already prove that you have team experience and you know how to work with source control and you've come up with your own idea and the team has come together with an idea, that is like hugely valuable because there's so much wrapped up in that, right? It's giving feedback, it's taking feedback, it's being genuine about like, hey, let's pursue this idea and trying to convince other people, and then also helping each other out when the going gets rough, and also being there when like someone else broke the source control or whatever. That stuff like happens a lot in like an actual production cycle as well, especially with the timeline that we have, right? So you get put into that pressure cooker. But I think it's actually really valuable to have that experience. And we've heard like a lot of great feedback from people that have gotten jobs through it as well. Also, if you're going on a holiday during the challenge, I mean, maybe you shouldn't, right? That's why we try to give you the dates like beforehand. But okay, make sure you do your work beforehand and keep in contact with your team members to see how the updates are going. Yeah, I mean, I think you don't need to be in constant contact with the team members. I think what is important is communication. This is the single biggest thing in a team challenge. If you have good communication, the teams automatically have like, I don't know what the percentage would be, but like a massive increase in the percentage chance of first finishing and then also winning. It's not about like the quality of the art, or it's not about that, blah, 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 blah. It's about like just communicating with each other. So yeah, that's why we also try to like put a massive emphasis on that in the kickoff too. Like Lily is saying, a challenge behind a challenge. Oh yeah, oh yeah. And you also have to think about it, right? Like the challenges. So last time we had 120 people apply, and then 70 people got in. We made like 15 teams, set up source control and all that kind of stuff. That's 2 people. Right? Like the whole thing. That's 2. Well, back then it was like 2.5 people because Lewis was also helping with stuff too. But for the most part, it's just 2 people organizing the whole thing, right? So there's a lot of work that goes in behind it. But yeah, all that said, I'm really looking forward to it. I feel like this one is going to be interesting because it is the first time that we have such a direct like thematic, right? Like Witch's Den, which is the first time that we've been like relatively specific. Apart from like the older ones, right? Like we had, what was the one, like Nightmare Garden was very specific as well. Or like Cuban Kitchen, but we talked about that one last time, I think. So yeah, we're gonna see how it goes. Oh, don't know if I missed this. But hello, Harry. Good to see you here. Yeah, just a last reminder for people that are new here. Feel free to ask me any questions about game dev, about environment art, all that good stuff. We're gonna be diving into some feedback in a little bit. I was gonna ask any newsworthy stories, because I feel like every time we start out with like a couple of newsworthy stories, but I've not been keeping up with the news and I've not seen anything float past, so I feel like it's like kind of a chill week for like news. Apart from the whole weird thing that is now happening with like Affinity, where Affinity just took down their shop and they have, what is the banner again? What does it say again? Like the future, the creative future is here or something like that. Where it's like, okay, very vague, a lot of speculation going on with that one. I don't know what it means. It is, it is, it is kind of weird that they have made the iPad versions free. So that makes me think that they might do the same thing with Affinity as well, but then roll it into Canva or something. Oh, Liz, does someone want a level up buddy so we can share progress until we make it a challenge? Oh, that's actually an interesting idea. Does someone want to, yeah, a level up buddy? Oh, I wonder how we can how we can do something like that. How we can what's the best way of saying it? Incentivize that like in the community. I kind of feel like it would be kind of cute to have like an artist matching system where it's like, hey, look, we're buddies now. We're gonna keep each other accountable. Abdu, what does a level up buddy mean? That's a good question. I think it's honestly just like an accountability partner, right? Where you just show each other like updates and all that kind of stuff, help each other out. You're also saying that they're either going full open source or full AI. I doubt that they're gonna go full open source. That doesn't seem. That would be weird that they would do that now. Full AI. Well, so Canva has like a lot of AI features because we do use Canva a lot, right? And it is honestly a great tool if you want to get like some quick designs out there. The issue that I have with those apps like Canva, for example, is that they're really good at making small adjustments for like quick social media posts, right? But they absolutely suck for if you want to make like detailed designs, right? For something like Affinity, or something like that, where yeah, you need that like specific control, and you need to go like one step deeper. Like it feels like I cannot do that in Canva. I need to have like a design app like Affinity Photo or Designer or whatever. So my hope is that they won't fold it into Canva, because then, I mean, maybe if they keep like the core logic and then that becomes like their expert mode, right? Like you have Canva for quick stuff, and then you have like, oh, if you want to have like detailed designs, then you go into like Canva's version of Affinity. Maybe? But that also seems to be like very difficult from like a programming perspective. Liz is saying, level up, buddy. I mean, just as somewhat to cheer each other up and ask for advice until we level up our skills. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Hello, Joe. Harry is also saying, I need to make the Affinity change. I'm still on Photoshop at the moment. Well, Harry, bad news for you, because their shop is down and you can't get Affinity anymore. So, yeah, a week too late with that one. Yeah, exactly. Bad news. Yeah, it is a weird one. It is a weird one, but I guess we'll see. I think at the end of the month they have like a live stream going on where they're gonna reveal like all the new stuff. Guess we'll just have to wait and see. No more Affinity? Nope. Well, Yes, you can still get Affinity on iPad, and it's free now, but the apps are gone. You can't get them anymore. And I don't know. Well, no one knows what they're gonna do with them. So I'm still glad that I have my subscription. Well, not subscription, my license here that I'm just gonna probably be using until forever now. And then yeah. Battlefield 6 sold 7 million units. Let's go! Congratulations to Battlefield. I guess that happened. Yeah, Battlefield 6 came out. Has been good. I have not played it. I feel like my Battlefield 6 days are kind of over. Fear. They are no longer selling them, so like you can't get Affinity anymore. So yeah, that's unfortunate. Perpetual forever. Let's go. I'm still rocking my 2020 edition from like Substance Painter and Designer, so I'm all good. You know, I'm on that perpetual thing. Foxy Kiss is asking, high question for the HRs. What does HR mean? Let's see. Does it matter what? Well, yeah, Burak. That's a great shout. Yeah, normally it means human resources. HR Geiger, that's a weird one. Oh wait, what? Oh, I see what you mean now. Okay, so for HR, does it matter what rendering program you use? Well, so okay, first of all, HR is never gonna look at your work. Horse riders won't even look at your work either. They're just too busy riding horses, you know? So they're off in the distance. Anyway, for human resources, does it matter what rendering program you use? Or is it better to stick with a game engine like Unreal to do the renders? So, most of well, in 90%, 99% of the times, like HR doesn't even look at your renders, right? It's either gonna be artists themselves who do like internal recruiting, or it is gonna be recruiters who will be looking at your like screenshots, right? The main benefit that you get from rendering them in like a game engine or a real-time engine, like for example, Marmoset or Substance Painter or something like that, right? Is the benefit that you're showcasing that you can get something to look good in a real-time renderer, right? If you are thinking about using Unreal, just use Unreal to do the presentation because that also showcases that you can do the full pipeline, right? From like beginning to end presentation, all built for Unreal, and you make it look really good and sexy in Unreal. So yeah, it's a main benefit because, for example, if you were to render it in like Blender cycles, that is gonna have a completely different render style. And you know, if you make something like look really good and sexy in there, you get away with a lot more because it's an offline renderer, right? So there's no real-time aspect to it. But it's actually an art to make something look really good in a real-time render. Yeah, like Leah was saying. Do studios pay for the programs? Yeah, studios have their own licenses for the programs. Unless if you're a freelancer, then you are expected to pay for those licenses yourself. Well, depending on the contract. That's where negotiations come in, and you can potentially like even negotiate for them to like pay for your license, depending on the situation. I guess. I'm playing Clair Obscur for the 30th time for the first time. Oh, sorry. No. I'm playing Clair Obscur Expedition 33 right now for the first time. Maybe not national news, but news for me. Let's go. Yeah, I played that game for a little bit. It was just not my thing. It's just not my type of game that I tend to play. But yeah. Yeah, how are you liking it so far? That's a great question, Bjork. But yeah, I think it's about that time that we dive into some feedback. Feel free to keep asking the questions, and we can dive into them as needed. You know the drill already. Feel free to raise your hands, and then we'll go by first hands raised, our very official method. I've been told or threatened to play it by 4 people very aggressively. I'm liking it so far, but I'm not that far in yet. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people really, 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 really like it. But it's just hard to it's just hard to get into a game like that for me, you know? I mean, it's any big game really. Like I like the games where I can just like pick up, play half an hour and just let go again, right? Um Whereas with those games, it's like, oh no, you need to actually take your time and like use brain power to like absorb like all the craft that went into the game, right? And I feel like if I play those games at the times that I play it, which is usually right before I go to sleep, my brain power is not there, you know? So I don't do these games justice. All right, let's switch it on up. And we're gonna switch it over to Burak first. Did a little bit of prep. I get you. I'm loving Fortnitemares at the moment. I have no idea what that is. Is that like a new season of Fortnite? I love games where it saves every second. Uh, okay. Halloween Fortnite. It's been a while since I played any Fortnite. Not against it. A pretty fun game. It's just like I feel like the whole thing just like kind of passed me by, you know? Mike, you are raising your hand. Why are you raising your hand? I don't think you're in this one, buddy. Yeah. Oh no. Did you forget the tag? Let me see. No, Mike. You forgot the tag. No. It's just so unserious. I love it. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like with Fortnite, you just have fun with friends, right? That's what matters. Okay, we'll see. We'll see if we can squeeze a person in here. But we'll see. It depends. First, let's start out with Burak. So let me get some content. So some feedbacks for the last improvements and for the props. So cool. Let's have a look at the last improvements. Let's focus on number 1 right here. It's you can already tell. Like if I zoom out just a little bit more and I get rid of all the junk that I wrote on top of it, you can already tell how much easier it is on the eyes and like how the composition is kind of guiding you towards like the right places now, right? We've effectively used, if I make a couple of annotations, we are now effectively using scale and silhouette on our main focal point, which is great, right? That's a good win as well. First of all, second, we also reduced just the amount of like distracting like colors that we have all over the place, which is great, right? And then also, yeah, same thing for the colors behind here, right? Everything is a bit more uniform, but in a good way. Because if we deliberately make some areas uniform and then add color contrast in other areas, we can make them stand out, right? And that's why right now what's happening is that we see like a lot of blue happening, a lot of blue and purple, like a lot of cold tones, and then it's highlighted by the warm tones, right? Which is good. So I'd like to see that. There's still, I just noticed a minor point. But there's still just some like light but there's no physical asset there, which is always going to be weird, right? So the choices usually in those cases are like, okay, we remove the lights, or we add like some prop or something like that, right? Easy fix. It's honestly, it's more like a detail. So overall, great job. I love how everything is kind of working together now. Cool. Let's have a look at some assets here then. So I think these assets are looking good, right? They look good. It's just, it's hard to tell like what the texture and material surfacing is supposed to be, right? So that's why I kind of added like generic, but maybe even like noisy or confusing textures here. However, I also wanted to point out another thing, is that this is a-okay for a scene. If you look at the scene, I mean, I had trouble even finding them. So if this is the size of those assets, unless you're gonna do like really up close detail renders and all that kind of stuff, I don't necessarily care to look a bit generic. We can get away with it. I don't mind at all, right? Because you always have to think about it in a way where we want to spend our time on the stuff that matters, right? Whereas something that is so small on the screen probably is not going to matter that much, which is also very common to see in games, by the way, where stuff like that is just like one or two titleables, depending on how much like complexity there is, right? Maybe they do like a little trim sheet or something like that. Well, you'll see that like very often. If it's not important to the player, like we don't spend a lot of our artistic bandwidth on it, right? However, if we're going to see them up close like this, that's where it becomes an issue, because if you want to showcase them, then they need a lot more love. That's why I'm adding this here. So you basically get to choose, like, either I'm going to leave them like that, but then that also stops you from having like detailed screenshots in your ArtStation post. You want to show them off, I want to see detail, right? So you as an artist actually have the choice of, hey, look, I want to show this off, so I'm going to spend more of my artistic credits here. If I don't want to show it off, I'm fine. It can be a little bit more simplistic. For generic noisy and confusing texturing, I would actually recommend you to look at your references and try to replicate the textures that you see, right? I don't know if you have references for them. Oh, yep, you do. There's a lot of references here. Yeah, it is. You have a lot of this stuff, right? Like a lot of different influences coming together, which also probably doesn't help like how chaotic they feel. Right? Because there's clay stuff, there's metal stuff, there's silverware, like it's just everything coming together. Where I want to see, honestly, a page like this all about this one single asset. And that will give you enough visual input to then start replicating it, right? So that would be something to look into. I'm thinking to make a showcase in Marmoset with my props. Then you 100% are going to have to do way more work to make them look really, really good, right? This is also, I'll give you another tip. If you want to showcase assets in a scene, showcase assets that are important to the scene or the storytelling, right? Because if we're just going to be showcasing like generic assets, it's okay. But again, think about it from like a prioritization perspective, right? If you're working on a game, you're probably going to spend more time on something that is going to be important to the story, so we can already replicate that in our personal work as well. Um, I don't know. I'm just gonna name a random thing, right? Like you have like a bunch of like these cool like pottery and silverware and all that kind of stuff. Okay, cool. So why don't we turn this into like a little Roman pedestal, and we turn it into like a shrine of offering, where now you have like the one vase, maybe like a couple of like silverware next to it, maybe a couple of flowers, right? And now what is happening is that we're not only making our assets more important to the scene, but we're also clustering them together, and we're making the scene more important because it has more assets in it, and they're supporting the storytelling, right? So we're basically looking at it in terms of killing two birds with one stone, right? So if you're doing something like just these assets, try to, and if you're going to be spending like a whole bunch of time on it, try to then also make it worthy to the scene, or try to integrate it in the scene in such a way that it makes sense to add more stuff there. Cool. That's just an idea. Feel free to do whatever you want with that. Because you can take it whatever you want to go, right? But it's just think about it in a way where, okay, I'm going to spend a whole bunch of time on these assets. How can I get more out of them, right? Leia is saying that you need to treat them closer to hero assets, which means much more material complexity. Yep. Yeah. That's also why we're elevating them too, right? Instead of having them like generic assets, we actually put them on a table with like a little bit of a sculpted like offering table or something like that, and we're integrating them fully into the scene. And the last thing that I wanted to say really quickly is, because I saw that you sculpted like all these stones by hand. Save yourself a bunch of time. Sculpt one stone, duplicate it, rotate it around, sculpt the other side. Now you have two stones that you can just duplicate and rotate. And then you have a base that you keep working from. But after a while, you can honestly just keep duplicating stuff that you sculpted, right? It saves yourself a bunch of time. And especially when it comes to repeating things, right? It's just like you can take like one set of stairs. Cool. Then you sculpt that, and then you just like copy it over, and then you just shift the pieces, or like I don't know. You can shift the pieces, duplicate them over here, like move this left and right, and then you have like a new staircase, right? And then you just like sculpt the stuff that looks repetitive. I was just practicing my sculpting skills that I started using ZBrush like a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. Yeah, but it's still, I think if you want to make like a more effective way of sculpting things, because at a certain point, like you probably noticed this yourself, like the first rock was probably like really interesting to kind of figure it out. Second rock goes a little bit quicker. Third rock goes way quicker. After a certain point, you're just going through the motions and you're not even thinking about it, right? So, yeah, it's up to you. It is just, it was like an option to have it go way quicker and more focused. Leia is saying, by the way, not everything has to be the same amount of material complexity. Creating a hierarchy of asset importance and treating them for the highest to lowest importance gives a good overview. Yeah, that's basically what I was mentioning before, right? Where what I tend to do is like all the hero assets, or like what I tend to do, what is very common in the industry is that you put more attention to the stuff that is going to be more important to the scene, right? So if we want to do a quick little overview for this scene, it is basically going to be something like this. This, number one priority. The pillars, because they're modular and all those architectural pieces, we'll count them separately. But you basically end up with like a couple of zones, right? Where like this is like our priority zone. So this is number one zone, this is all hero assets, and this is where most of our attention is going to because we are drawing the attention here, right? And then technically for this scene, we don't really have a separation. Most of that other stuff is just primarily just going to be tilables and trim sheets and all that kind of stuff. So we are spending way less time on those assets because we get a lot of reusability, right, with the modular approach. So yeah, very important. Very, very, very important. Yeah, cool little updates, Barack. Thank you for sharing it. Justine is saying the colors in the scene are great. Yes, and I agree. You've got like the color palette is like so much more refined than it was in the beginning, so it's awesome to see. The don't repeat yourself workflow in order to keep your motivation and save time in your creative process. The mirror tools are useful for this too. Yeah. It's the whole thing of like working smarter, not harder, right? So in a sense, what you're saying is if you want to do a sculpting exercise, like that is totally fine, right? But yeah. Thanks, Brock. Okay, let's see who was next. Leia was next. Leia, I did not make. I did not add like any overpaints yet, so we're gonna see. Got a lot of people today. I think we have about 11 people today, so it's a little bit quieter than last week. But yeah. I am gonna see. I'm doing a trial run in the background to see like how much time I'm spending, because I want to keep I want to keep my yapping to a minimum, or try to at least. Let's see. So Leia is next. Where is your entry? There we go. For this the questions of the week. You want to utilize Substance Sampler and Quixel Megascans to gather and optimize most of my materials. As going for the full procedural substance design round is too consuming for me to build every material from scratch. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I will utilize Substance Designer for PBR optimization. Blah, 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 blah. Are there other programs such as Quixel Mixer that I should consider for potential texture blending? Not really. Not that I can think of, honestly. So, full caveat here is that I don't really tend to use those programs. Like, I tend to make everything from scratch and then see how I can reuse those things in a better way, right? Because, in a more efficient way, should I say. Because the benefit about working in Substance Designer, for example, is that you make one stone material. Cool. I have my stone. It takes a lot of time. So that first one is going to take a lot of time, right? The benefit here, though, is that, first of all, you made it yourself, right? So there's that benefit. But also, I want to create like a second stone. Cool. I've built this one in such a way so that if I want to create like a second stone, I can just take my first stone and then just do the second one in less amount of time, right? And you build yourself up like a little catalog of stuff that you can just like keep reusing, like even not like one-to-one, but you can still go into your stone that you made for like a different project and you can kind of reuse it to do like a different material, right? And you just build up like a catalog of things. Where with most of the speed that you're gaining from doing it with Quixel Mixer, it is very good for those like jobs where you want to get stuff out quickly, but it becomes less efficient if you then want to do like unique stuff later down the line. Not saying that either one is good, right? Like it just depends on your timeline and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's just something to point out, right? Let me make some notes of that. So it's basically the age-old debate, right? Like unique. Well, I'm calling this unique, but you get what I mean. It's more just like the texture blending that you said, right? So procedural is so the procedural is like a high time cost up front, but scales great, right? Where yeah, unique is basically just the opposite, right? Where it's like relatively quick to just like bash stuff together. But you also have like less control, right? Because you're limited by the stuff that you find and like how you blend things together. So you don't really have that fine control. Less control or contrast. Yeah. Just give you an idea. Also added a bunch of notes for the material setup. Let's see. Let's see if I have them in here as well. Oh no, I didn't. I mean, I think most of this stuff is like pretty self-explanatory, right? Like I don't think this approach is going to change all too much whether you use like procedural or unique stuff, right? Because yeah, this is we're just talking about the inputs into the system, right? There's also a mix between unique and procedural, like bake a low poly using tileable and then detail mask, for example. Oh yeah. Yeah, like nothing is black and white in like game dev, right? It's the full spectrum. But yeah, I don't think this really changes what we talked about before, I think. So let me continue reading your question. But yeah, you were asking about like other programs for Quixel Mixer. I don't know. In short, like Quixel Mixer is probably a good one to use. You could honestly just use like Substance Designer for this stuff as well. Yeah. If you have like all the separate maps, right, you can kind of build your own system where you can kind of blend them based on like whatever you need, right? Because I mean, you get like all the high textures and stuff too. So you could technically do it in Substance Designer as well. I don't know how easy it is compared to Quixel Mixer, because I will always favor Substance Designer because that's my comfort zone, right? And like Quixel Mixer is like, oh, now I have to use this other thing again. So yeah, that's something for you to kind of like play around with, I guess. And then the second question is, when should I start working on foliage and such as nanite foliage? Should I purely focus on setting up the material layering system, or should I introduce the foliage logic into my material layering from the start? I was reading this before and I'm not really getting what you mean by that. So let me see if there's like additional context for that. Because what it comes down to is you would have like a completely separate shader for your foliage, right? So you would have to set up a different shader anyway. So I don't know if that makes sense or if that's like what you were thinking about. But yeah, when to focus on foliage? I mean, I would basically treat the whole scene as right now we're going from, what do you call it, like L2, right? So you're basically moving everything from like an L2 stage. I would honestly do the whole scene in this sort of manner, right? Where you take your trees and all that kind of stuff also up to the same sort of level. Or at least be like, okay, I'm gonna get my trees in, but they're gonna be L1 until I get everything else to L3, and then I'll go back to the trees to level them up to the same level, right? That's fair too. But I would say that it's a good idea to get them in already at this point. You're not really losing anything with it. And it's also gonna help you decide what you need to do with the terrain. Because, for example, this screenshot, I'm not necessarily too worried about. This screenshot is you're gonna have to do a lot of work making this background look really good, if that is the thing that you want to focus on, right? Obviously, you can change the background, you can move trees, you can do whatever to kind of clean them up, right? There's still like a lot of choices that we can make, but this is a huge space to cover if we want to add like trees into it, right? So yeah. Leia is saying, I'm not quite sure about my approach. I'm more inexperienced with material creation. Okay, cool. So we have. So the second thing was basically what we talked about is like materials, right? Usually, what you have is you have a master material per domain. That also that will also make more sense if you're in Unreal. Like you will have like your different domains, right? For example, you have one that is just going to be like your master shader for like all your assets, right? So you have like M assets. Let's call it like that. This is usually just like unique information with like a bunch of stuff, right? Then you can have like one for foliage. And then that is usually for trees, etc. Right? So usually, because the difference here is this will use a different material terrain, a material domain compared to foliage, because the foliage is going to be a two-sided foliage shader. Compared to just a normal lit shader, right? And that's where like the differences come in, right? So whenever the domain of the material changes, then it's kind of good to think about getting like a new master material that you can use specific to that domain. I hope that makes sense. But like I said, that makes more sense if you open the dropdown in your material domain inside of Unreal Engine. That's going to be pretty helpful with that. For example, the same thing here would be like, okay, you can then use like assets translucent, because that is also a different material terrain, material domain, right? So that would be like a separate. I would set up like a different shader for that. However, you can kind of tweak this and like build this to your own specs, right? There's no set standard within all the games that use this, so feel free to experiment with this. But this is a good way to think about the system. And then yeah, just a third option here was just get the trees in the scene, right? Because we wanna see them. We want to see them, and then we can also decide, because yeah, let's say, I don't know, we have like a bunch of trees that are going to be around here, then we can get away with like, oh, okay, I don't need to be worried about like my mountains anymore, right? Because it's going to be covered in trees anyway. So it's gonna inform us like how far we need to go with different aspects of our scene, for example. Cool. Different material layering systems for different types of assets. I'm not sure if you're talking about the material layering system or if you're talking about just the material system. If we're talking about specifically material layering, you don't need that for foliage. I don't know if that's just like a way, like I don't know, like a terminology thing that might be confusing, right? But like material layering is like a separate system where you can build materials out of like separate layers of master materials, basically. So I hope that's not confusing because that's opening like a whole can of worms. But you won't need, as far as I'm aware, never thought about that, but I don't think you need like you don't need a material layering system on a tree. It's more for like complex assets. I noticed that I have to research more. Oh, this is an endless can of worms, right? Like game art is just going to be this, where you thought, well, to be fair, I don't think I've ever thought that I knew everything because it was just so much to discover. But there's always like the next can of worms, and then technology will change, and then you have to do like the next batch of research, right? So, no, it's good that you're here asking those questions, and I'm happy that I can sort of help you with those. Slade is asking a question about foliage. Can I use a Megascan trunk and extend it off in SpeedTree, or should I sculpt it from scratch? Something like a basic pine trunk. You can do whatever you want, Slade. You can do whatever you want. That's the benefit of personal work, right? Like in a professional environment, you would probably not do that, right? Because unless you have access to like Megascans and like the company's paying for it, you don't have access to it. But like otherwise, you can just. So recruiters won't say it's cheating. No, no. Can I let you all in on a tip? Don't say this, but recruiters, they usually don't know how art is made. But that, don't tell anyone, okay? What recruiters usually do is they get a list of points to look at, right? I'm not saying that most of them like don't know how to do art. Like they might have like an inkling on what the differentiation between good and bad art, right? And it might be looking at certain aspects, right, in a different way. But in general, that's not a recruiter's job, right? A recruiter's job is looking at really interesting candidates that basically just tick like a bunch of check boxes, and then like someone else in the team can then also verify if they want to go through like the rest of the process, right? So usually the recruiter will just look at like, okay, who has the right experience, who has like the right amount of experience, like the correct skills, like who's interesting to talk to, move those to the team, and the rest of them just like get left behind, right? And then the next step is like, okay, we're actually going to verify like all the visuals that are on your portfolio, and we're going to ask you some questions about them, right? With other artists, you got the balance of skills you want to show / practice with the time you have. Yeah, yeah. In general, that's not. I mean, yeah. We only have so much time in a day, right? That's why. That's why I also love thinking about the concept of like, what do you want to do, right? Because it's such a great indicator of like, hey, look, I don't care about props. Also, to a certain degree, Tim, I don't care if you tell me to like make a prop, I won't do it. I'm just gonna go for assets, like environments the entire time, you know? Which is basically me. Right? Like I can make an asset, yeah, but I'm at home in environment art. Whereas other people, like good friends of mine, they're the complete opposite, right? Where yeah, they kind of they know how to make environments, but they're at home in assets, right? All right, keep on moving because my yap counter is going up. Dang it. Let's see. Slate is gonna be next. Slate. Let's see. There we go. There we go. Slate is asking 2 questions. Lovely. We got some cool references for this stuff as well, by the way. This is honestly looking great, man. And then especially comparing it to like what you're making, it's looking really, really nice. I love some of the smaller details on it already. Let me just grab all this stuff. I don't know, do something like this, I guess. But let's see. Let's focus on the questions, shall we? So, question number 1: to the right side of the dish, where it's completely empty, it's going to be covered with foliage. But any ideas for set dressing might be interesting. To the right side of the dish, this section here. Well, I would think about like, I would think about infrastructure, right? Usually, infrastructure as a broad thing is what I gravitate towards, right? So what I mean by that is, okay, how are people getting to this place? What do they do when they get to this place? Like, I don't know, where do they take lunch? Where do they go after peeing? Like what, like the infrastructure is basically like how people engage with an area like this, right? So my immediate thinking about this is, okay, cool. We got this radar dish in the middle of nowhere. There must be like a mechanic every now and again that comes in here, checks on the equipment. It's also, it looks at a decent size. So maybe there's like permanent stuff going on here. So I'm thinking immediately, okay, cool. We are gonna add some fencing here. Cool, so this is gonna be a fence. Maybe, yeah, because you got these fences already. It would actually be great. Yeah, we're gonna be pulling the fence up a little bit. Boonk. So we got some fencing here. That's great. Now, I'm just gonna add like a couple of parking spots, you know? Doesn't mean that there has to be a car. We can have like a parking spot. You know, and then we can just like curve this off a little bit. Maybe there's like a dirt road that's kind of leading up to here, right? So, how would that work? It's probably gonna be like a little bit of like a road that's gonna lead off. Is this gonna be, I don't know, maybe we have like a little like guard boots that kind of checks where people have to come in. Right? And then there's gonna be like a little, like a little barrier like this. Nice. And then this is where basically the whole thing is gonna be closed off. Tink tink. Cool. And then there's gonna be a little door here because people need to get into this fenced compound, which is just gonna be like one of those like typical like ring fences. Right, and you can kind of see like my process when it comes to this, right? Like just thinking about like, okay, how do people engage with this space? Like where do they park their car? All that kind of stuff. Um, pay and display machine maybe. Yeah, sure. Like you can have a guard, you can have a pay and display machine. Pay and display machine might be a little bit weird for being so out of middle of nowhere, but hey, you know, like if you support it with other stuff, it might be interesting. It could yeah, if we do like the pay and display machine, we can turn this into like, because I kind of went to the route of, oh, this is like a secure facility, right? This is like off limits to like normal public. What if we twist it on its head and we say like, hey, look, this is like a visitor thing. This is where people come in to come explore about like, I don't know, radio waves coming from outer space or something like that, right? We can then make it a public thing and then turn it with like a pay and display thing, right? So whatever you come up with, you could kind of turn that into assets that you need, right? Which is, God, I love this. I love this so much. This is basically why I'm in this job, honestly. So that's happening right here is coming up with things on the fly based on art direction or limitations or whatever. But yeah, you can turn it into whatever you want, like a private parking spot or like a visitor area. Yeah. You can turn it into whatever you want. Oh, Slate, you deleted your message, but I can still read it on the chat. You thought of a campfire, but since this is abandoned. Okay, so if this is abandoned, you can still use all of this stuff that we just did, right? Like a private parking space. And you just, it's relatively easy to make something look abandoned. You just open some doors. You imagine yourself as like an urban explorer, like cutting one of the fences open, breaking in that way. You know, like you can relatively easy make it feel like it's abandoned for a long time. because that is almost like what I did is like the base layer, right? We're thinking about the logical space first. And then if you want to make it look abandoned, that's like the dressing that we do on top, right? So we can kind of layer it up that way. So we can basically, yeah, add layer, and then we're gonna do like abandoned, right? That's gonna come on top of all this stuff. And no matter what you do, whether it's a private parking or a visitor area, like adding the abandoned factor on top of it, it's gonna look pretty cool, right? It's just gonna look slightly different. In the private area, should parking have an asphalt floor or a dirt material? That's up to you. You can choose. Think about, so twist that question into a question for yourself. Like if it has an asphalt floor, what does that say? And if it has a dirt floor, what does that say? Right? Where like an asphalt floor looks to me like, oh, this is more established, this is a serious company. Whereas like a dirt floor is like, oh, this is a one-man operation that is just a dirt path. It's not even a parking spot, right? Like if it's dirt, I'm imagining that it's just like a driveway, and then there's not even a parking spot. It is literally just like fenced around, and it's just one guy coming in with a key, right? So it's again like you can do either or. Well, no, you can do either of those things, but both of them are going to be saying something completely different about the location, right? So go through those motions. Like, okay, what if it has an asphalt floor? Why would it have an asphalt floor, right? And then ask yourself a couple of whys in sequence, and you're gonna find something out about this location. Same for the dirt material, right? Joe is saying open doors, add some subtle foliage overgrowth, break some glass on a window. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. There's a lot of good urbex videos on YouTube, as you might expect. So yeah. Let's see. So that was basically, let me recap that a little bit, right? Because we kind of went crazy. So number one was so the empty area is basically thinking about the logic of the space, which usually in where I tend to go first is infrastructure, right? Maybe they link close together actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I feel like infrastructure is almost like the visual representation of logic, right? So logic is basically like infrastructure, and then we can add like whatever dressing on top, right? So yeah, and then for that we just add like Joe suggested overgrowth, broken stuff, etc. Right? We can build that on top of that infrastructure layer. Cool. Question number 2. Finish the bridge textures. I did add a decal pass and included some rubble scatter. I will add some ivy and grass in the crevices later when it's time to create foliage. Should I move on or improve it? Sorry for the lack of references, but I've seen bridges like this in real life, but somehow couldn't find any online. Yeah. Okay, so this is interesting. I'm gonna point something out. If you, I don't know if this is already. Maybe I'm doing like a little bit of a, I'm calling you out on the spot here. But if you say, sorry for the lack of references, but I've seen bridges like this in real life, but couldn't find it, that kind of hints to me that you were making this bridge without references before. So maybe that is something to keep in mind next time, right? Like, always use references whenever you're creating anything. Because yeah, it's the basis of everything. It's like reference, 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 right? Anyway, on to the question. Should I move on or improve it? I think we're getting to the stage where oh, let's see. So Slate is saying I had it all the time, but I thought this was not enough. Um well, yeah, it kind of like there's what is enough for you is like all that you need, really, right? Which is like a weird way of saying it. But like if you have enough references for you to like understand like an asset or an environment completely, it can be one image, it can be thousands of images. It kind of, yeah. I tend to go deeper because I wanna see this bridge from like multiple angles and see how I can find it and do like a deep dive on it. But yeah, whatever works for you. To your question, should I move on or improve it? I think this is one of those cases where like, hey, look, we have a scene to build, so it's time to move on, right? Because otherwise we're just gonna be doing things to this bridge, and then at a certain point you get so demotivated because there's still a freaking scene to build, right? So I think honestly it's time to move on, because let's think about it this way, right? Move on. And this is the thing that everyone has probably heard me say like 1,000 times already, but iterate. And iteration also means that like, hey, look, this is good enough for now. Maybe I'll come back into the future. It depends. I still need to go and like make the rest of the scene, right? So yeah, I'd rather be like, hey, look, I know that I can improve it, but that's fine. Because this is the easy stuff, right? Like just adding like a couple of grass bits and all that kind of stuff. That's easy to do at the end. So yeah, for now, I would just like move on and iterate on the rest of the scene. Joe is saying I do the same as me. Sometimes I even go as far as trying to get close-up images of the materials used in the asset too. Yeah, I tend to go like pretty crazy. Just had to confirm. That's all good, Slate. Appreciate it. But yeah, which is looking really good. So good stuff, man. Thank you for the update. But yeah, Joe. Yeah, I do the same. Like I go nuts, especially when it comes to not only executing but also coming up with like the medieval stuff. Right, I went crazy on that because I feel like the more you get to know about a certain topic, the better it is that you can execute on top of it. Right. So, for example, the way that people used to interact with like medieval tools back in the day, that can give you like an indication on how how the handles on like a sort of tool were worn compared to what you assume to be, right? Stuff like that. Sure. I'm definitely on the spectrum of like, I'm spending way too much time looking at random bullshit to just find like that one golden nugget that I can use. Maybe not recommended, but yeah, still so much stuff that you can learn about it. Bidar is saying, these kind of environments feel most common with post-production images from large studios like DICE. Is there a benefit to make them more overgrown to show off an understanding of the basics of environment art, or also broad spectrum possibilities of PBR environments? So is there a main benefit to make them more overgrown to show environment art and also broad spectrum possibilities? So, I mean, there's no real benefit, right? Like, if you think about it, the only thing that you're showcasing that is going to be different than making the base scene without making it overgrown is that making it overgrown is going to give you the option to make foliage, right? So that is like an additional skill that you can showcase on top of it, right? But showcasing like this scene already and fully executing it on it and making it look good, that is already showcasing environment art, right? Because you're going to do a lot of environmental storytelling, and you're going to be using like different techniques and all that kind of stuff. So, hi, I need your help. I'm considering giving up on becoming a 3D environment artist because of financial problems and because I don't think I have a future in this industry. I don't know if I should quit. I don't think you should quit. I think you should find a job. Don't right now, especially right now, please, 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 do not think that like you're gonna get into the industry without having some like additional support if that is what you need, right? Focus on putting food on the table first, and then do all the learnings that you have to do for becoming a for like a game artist afterwards. Because yeah, the priority should be on getting getting yourself fed and making sure that you have a roof on your head first. I work in the airport and I'm thinking about my future and I would like to have a house and money and stability. Okay, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking? Um 29. Okay. I mean, this is more going into financial advice, really, right? Which is not really that appropriate for me to do. Um, I will say that if you want to go in games, financial gain and stability is not what I would assign to working in video games. Straight up. Like, if we can be clear about that, like, I know a lot of people that have moved around for the job and they were fired and like all that kind of stuff. So stability is kind of out of the window. Um, the money, in my perspective, I feel like you can make like a really good income with this job. However, not in the beginning though. I think in the beginning, it is very difficult to get a job that is going to be financially rewarding because you are most likely going to have to relocate to a place that is going to be pretty expensive. So, yeah, usually the cost of living in places where you have to have a game job are going to be really expensive. It is changing, but it's not as rapid as you want and probably not even within the same country, right? So I just want to get that out there. I think if you really want to have a house and money, I would look at, I don't know, something different than games. I'm not saying that you can't have like a successful career in this, right? Like a successful and fulfilling and financially rewarding career, but I feel like it is probably not the way to go. Like if that is your focus, right? Working in restaurant service for a few years and being around your age is a struggle. Yeah. Words of my mentor: do not expect anything. Work more than you think you could. Stop watching bullshit and work instead. If you want it, you will get it, but you have to sacrifice a lot. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It might not be the advice that a lot of people want to hear, but I feel like I also had to sacrifice a lot. I was considering learning web development and try to use the money I make to continue investing into learning environment art. I don't know if that's a good idea. Um, I I honestly don't know. Like this feels like a conversation where you would need to sit down and like we would have to look at your entire portfolio and all that kind of stuff. So this is sort of out of the scope for here. Um, I feel that currently, from like a broad perspective, web development is sort of going through the same stuff as games in general. I feel like tech in general going through the same thing. But I'm also not going to tell you like what the alternative is because I'm not the best person to ask. Like genuinely. Like maybe it would help to actually go talk to like a career advisor. I know that we had like a bunch of them in like Belgium. I don't know if they're like relevant in the place where you live, but that might be someone to talk to because they probably have a better grip on this stuff. Um, and they might give you like more appropriate and accurate responses. But I honestly would just focus on like getting, well, you have a job already, right? Um, you have a job already in an airport. Try to make more money in that job already, or maybe pick up a second job. Try to live as cheaply as you can, and then spend. You don't even have to spend money, right? I don't necessarily want you to spend money on like environment art stuff. There's so many free resources out there. Um, that you just have to spend time, not money, to get better at environment art, I feel. Reread here, joining late. Do you agree with the film industry in those respects? I've heard it's super tough there as well. Yeah, I think from what I know, and take this with a grain of salt, right? When it comes to the film industry, my knowledge is almost non-existent, right? Like the only stuff that I hear is from like friends. Um and I don't have that many friends working in films industry. But they got hit really hard, like way harder than games did, from what I know. I've heard I've heard mixed results, like currently, about like how jobs are picking up. Like some people think that it's kind of getting better. Some people think that it's like, no, it's still the same. But yeah, it's hard for me to say. I don't really have a view into that industry all too much. But Shazar is saying yes, very bad. Mm, yeah, unfortunately, sad face. Yeah. Those getting higher than our senior. Yeah. So in general, that's the same thing with games as well, right? I feel like what has happened is that the market shrank and there's an oversupply about from people that want to get in, right? But we've gotten to the point where I've seen seniors kind of go below their own kind of like experience level and try to get jobs that way because I mean they also want to put food on the table, right? So I totally get it from their side. But what that means from like a market perspective is that like people with more experience are now taking the jobs that are for people with less experience in general, right? And that crunch is happening, let's say, from like a junior, from like one a person with no experience competing with juniors that have experience, but um, also just happening from like let's say a mid that wants to go somewhere else, to they're also competing with seniors, right? Jose is asking a question. When people say you gotta sacrifice a lot, does that mean you just gotta work 8 to 10 hours and forget about your girlfriend, friends, work, to work in games? Is it really that brutal? No, 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 no. I think when maybe putting sacrifice a lot is like um the wrong way of saying it. I think you have to make choices and somewhat uncomfortable choices where you can you can spend like let's say a common thing is that you do your work, you come home and you just don't want to do anything. If you want to get into games, you will have to do something. You will have to work on games, right? Like you will have to work on that asset that you don't want to work on. Um that doesn't mean that you have to forget about your girlfriend, your friends and health. You can still balance everything. And I know people who had like a lot of stuff going on and still got into games. But that also meant that they had to be very, very picky with how they spent their time. For example, let's say, for example, a person with like a family and a girlfriend and like a couple of kids, they have to be very picky with how they spend their remaining time because so much of their time is already consumed by justifiably, by the way, by their family, right? And if they then work a full-time job on top of that already, like how do you expect someone to get into games like that? However, I do know multiple people that did it right in that circumstance with those kind of parameters. So it is possible. It's just instead of saying like, "Hey, look, we're not going to go out every weekend. Um, I'm just going to stay in and I'm just going to try to do my work like on a Saturday, when I have the most time, and then we'll go out with the kids on Sunday." Right? Your timeline is going to look different compared to like a student who has no responsibilities, and it might be longer, but that doesn't mean that you can't get in, right? But that is, yeah, that is one of those cases where you have to just prioritize like how you decide to spend your own time and what is really crucial for you, right? And again, you can do that with a lot of other responsibilities in um in mind, right? But everyone, everyone kind of has their own kind of experience with this, right? For some people, it will be like, hey, look, I'm gonna see my friends a little bit less because I spent like, I don't know, um, I spent like way too much time with them anyway, right? Which is like not a thing that that you should say. But let's say you spend like your entire weekend with your friends. Yeah, you need to dial down on that, right? Mm-hmm. I just read that, Cesar. VFX is a frothy craft beer where the cream is getting all the attention. Oh my god. I had to double read that. I don't know what that was in reference to, but I get it now. Yeah, yeah. Um, how do companies even go through all the applications that are coming in? Do they check a certain amount, interview a few of those? Yeah. Usually, like it's relatively easy to check because a bunch of them are just not going to be relevant to the job. Usually, there's like automatic tracking systems. I've never worked in a company that necessarily uses those. It's just you go to a company website, you look at all the applications. Usually, you make a decision in like less than a second, and you just move on to the next, right? Um, doo-doo-doo-doo. Video game development. You're asking some really good questions, but I'm gonna take it from like a broader perspective. Um, if you are worried about change, video games might not be the thing for you. And I know that sounds pretty harsh, but like every couple of years, the video games industry completely invents itself again. Um, no one knows how AI is going to impact it, right? There's a lot of peacocking and a lot of just like, oh my god, this is going to change everything, blah 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 blah. But we have not seen it, right? We have not seen, apart from like demos or like whatever, we have not really seen like the actual impact of it yet. Um, and in general, I think this is like a tech thing, right? So yeah, yeah. Here's another thing that I want to avoid, right? Like Slade, I know where that's coming from. Um, but layoffs are everywhere. Stick to what you've already gotten yourself into. I get that advice, and there's a certain thing that agrees with it, but I don't know. I am personally like very hesitant to just be like, oh no, stick with what you know? Because that is the whole thing that kind of leads you to like the mentality of just like, I don't know, not really reinventing yourself, right? Arc making that one AI trailer. Yeah, yeah. I think it's a good move to find a niche and get good at it. Over time, experience snowballs, and it's hard to feel vulnerable, relatively. Yeah, I think it's also being okay with being vulnerable, right? And realizing that, hey, maybe it's time to kind of branch out a little bit, try to diversify your skill set just a little bit. Um, I mean, that's what I've been experimenting with, right? Like setting up the company on the side, like doing Beyond Extend, like always having like more than one thing going is kind of my way of dealing with this. But yeah, if in a large sense, what I've seen recently is that there's a to say it really short, right? There's a whole lot of worrying that is blocking people from doing actual work. And that is not good because if you want to make progress, at a certain point, you just have to be like, hey, look, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I'm not going to be worried about it. I'm just going to be doing my thing, try to get better. And then every couple of months, you do like a check in and see, like, okay, what has actually changed? Because what I think might be happening now is that so many people are worried about AI. And then I also have the feeling that, like, in a couple of years, we won't even be talking about AI anymore. Because AI to me right now feels like, hey, it's using Copilot and I can ask it a question and it can spit out like a social media, like body text. Cool. It's a tool, right? I want to get into the games industry for peace of mind of job security. I will think I continue to do some hours in my current industry to have a fallback. I don't think that's a bad shout, right? Like, I would only dedicate myself to an industry, not even the games industry, when I have a contract that is really in my favor, right? Because at a certain point, you have to think about yourself in a way as like, hey, I'm a business as well. So I'm only going to do this when there's something like credible for me in this deal, right? Elias, you were asking about Trimsheet stuff. Honestly, the best thing that I can say is go to our website and go check out like the Trimsheet document that we have on there. That is going to explain you a lot about trim sheets. Let me quickly link that for you. And we also have one about textile density as well. So that's going to kind of answer those two questions in one. Here you go. Let's see. The thing with AI as well is going to be used as a buzzword, which is seemingly amplifying fear-mongering. Well, yeah, like every couple of years there's like a new buzzword, right? And I feel like AI is just the one that is like exacerbated because we all knew it from before, right? Like Terminator, all that kind of stuff. We already had like a vision of AI in our heads. And now there's a whole bunch of companies that's using it as a marketing ploy. But what the real issue is that it's potentially scaring a whole bunch of people on doing less of the thing that they really, really enjoyed, right? That is the thing that kind of frustrates me. Nothing should ever scare you into doing the thing that you are passionate about. That's what I'm kind of, yeah. That's my gripe with it. Is it easier to get a job in indie studio or is it just as hard? Yeah, it's just as hard. I think it might be. So it's completely different, really, right? Because for indies, what you have to do is you have to be more of a generalist, whereas comparatively to AAA, what is happening is you have to be more of a specialist, right? So it's almost like you have one person who's like a really good plumber, but you also have another person who can build like a whole house by himself, right? That's kind of what we're talking about here. Like two completely different things. Where like for example, my experience, it can be somewhat relevant to like an indie game studio, right? But it would be very beneficial for me. Well, let's imagine that I only have my professional experience. I would kind of be useless for like an indie game studio. It's only because I have so much experience in my personal work doing the full range that I'm somewhat relevant to indie games, right? Yenta Gamer is saying, felt like 70% of the event at GDC Expo Pass were AI focused. It makes sense, right? Because that's where all the money is. And I think that's literally the main crux behind the whole thing. It is because all the investor money went there, and that's why we're seeing everyone just like adding AI features into whatever they're building, is because they want a piece of that pie, right? Because a couple of years ago, the pie was literally games. Think about like COVID. During COVID times, games was the thing to invest in. And now it just shifted from games to AI. That's why we're seeing this like suction happening, right? In a nutshell. Can we still be paid to enjoy what we like to do as a job? Oh yeah. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I get paid to do this job, which is like freaking amazing. Right? Like actually making art on a day-to-day basis, being able to contribute to like an artistic product that like millions of people are gonna play potentially. That is what? That's fucking awesome. I get to build a part of the world that is gonna be enjoyed by like so many people. That is fucking awesome. You know? Yeah, thank you also for the good questions. I know that we went a little bit deep there. I don't mind doing like these deeper talks about stuff. I know that a lot of people are struggling out there. Um, but yeah, I would just say like don't give up on your dreams. If this really is what you want to be doing and you're doing this in your free time, please, please, please keep on doing it. Because you are gonna regret if you do not do that. Oh yeah, Shazar. I'm fully aware. There's rumblings like that have been happening for a while, right? Where like big company bosses are saying like, "Hey, we're kind of seeing the end of this AI thing." Uh-oh. But now they're in like this weird spot where like they can't really be like too open about it because they get so much money out of it. So it's like, what do we do here? Dang it. So indie studios wouldn't hire someone who specializes in environment art. What other things can they learn to appeal to them more? Maybe Marvel's designer doing weapons. I mean, honestly, the best thing you can do is go to like an open position for like an indie company and see what they need. It's probably going to range wildly compared to like which company you're going to be applying for, but just not only being able to make environments is probably going to be a good thing. So doing weapons or maybe doing a little bit of characters or maybe doing a little bit of UI, it kind of depends, right? With indie games, the second part is you're asking or you're saying like with indie games you're allowed to get more involved with the creation. No, you need to be more involved with the creation because they only have 5 people making the game, right? So they can't have one person making an environment and then one person making a character and then one person making the UI because then who the fuck is going to do all the programming, right? No, it's all good, Vidar. It's all good. Guillaume is saying, I love to do 3D, but I don't know if I can be paid for this or if I want to do the 3D project for others. So yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's only one way to find out, right? Like it's by doing it. I get where you're coming from though. There's also that's also been like a concern from me. Where as amazing as it is to contribute to like these bigger projects, there's something about like doing stuff for yourself, but gotta put food on the table somehow, right? So we always have to balance that as artists. Was the skill level required to get into the industry lower in the past? That's a good question. I want to say yes because of a couple of factors. We have way more people wanting to get into this industry. This industry is also way more of an industry than it's ever been, right? Like people have recognized that this is like a project or like a career that you can do, right? Compared to even 10 years ago, like it kind of was. I didn't know that that was a thing, right? I was playing games. Um, yeah, like Jose is saying as well, a lot less resources. What you can learn online right now is fucking amazing, you know. Um, yeah. So yeah, I guess the skill level was lower because there was less. There was more ignorance to the whole thing, I guess. Right? It's like people didn't know what a good thing was. You didn't have ArtStation, which is basically just like a showcase of like, hey, look, this is the best stuff that's out there. So this should be the benchmark, right? Whereas before, it was like you would have to spend like hours and hours scrolling through like like a forum like Polycount or something like that to even figure out what the current benchmark is visually, right? So yeah. Oh yeah, software. Oh god, software has been so easy to work with. Everything is so easy to work with now, and it's gonna get even easier in the future. Which is, again, it's also like one of the pressures of like why so many people are trying to get in, right? It's no longer the amount of like hard work that it requires to get to like a certain skill level diminishes, but that also means that like the skill level shifts because now more people are getting to that level quicker, right? So it's shifting the whole market around it too. But yeah, let's have a look. Let's do some more feedback as well while we entertain this conversation. So the next one is from Moonlight, actually. So let's have a look. The first question was about UVs. Let me read through the Discord. Let me put on some other music as well. I'm getting some like creepy whispering in my ear. I don't really like that too much. Where are we? Oh, there we are. Okay. So, question one. Seams in UV maps. I'm a bit confused about how to create accurate seams. I know that every sharp edge, 90 degrees, should be a seam, but not all seams should be sharp edges, right? I'm still annoyed to create a seam that breaks all the things in small islands. What do you think about it? And do you have some advice or clarifications? I think it's totally fine, like, to add, like, all these cuts, right? But exactly like you said, the most important thing, close to 90 degrees, is a seam and make it a hard edge, right? Small islands are okay, especially if you have, like, a lot of these, like, smaller edges. They're also easier to maximize space in your UVs, right? So you will have to do that. The only way this only matters to baked assets, right? So if you were doing this with like a bunch of trim sheets, you don't have to care about like seams because you're just gonna make it one continuous strip of stuff and then you can just map it onto a trim sheet, right? Um so yeah. So it's totally fine to have it here, especially if you're gonna be baking it down, which it looks like you are. And then the second question was basically about the mirror method in modeling in your UV map. I'm not sure if I 100% like understood this correctly, but is it still required to double the space in your UV map for the other half, isn't it? Basically what you do here is whenever you want to apply like a symmetry or a mirror, right? You have like your asset here. Imagine that this is like your full asset. You basically just have like a mirror modifier that mirrors like the left to the right. And what that then means is that you can UV this section, and then once you add a mirror modifier to it, now you have your UVs done for the other section as well. The only thing that you need to keep in mind here is that you need to move that space. So, because now you have the same set of UVs overlaid on top of each other, right? You need to then move them off to the side as well, because otherwise you're going to have issues with baking in your texture program. So keep that in mind as well. Yeah. But it kind of depends, right? So for example, with this asset, you can get a lot of overlap out of like all these sections, right? They could almost all use the same sort of information because they're all very similar. But I would not split this up because you're gonna see the texturing effect happening here, right? So it's a constant like back and forth with like, okay, I'm not gonna symmetry or mirror this big face because what happens is we're gonna introduce something called butterfly mapping, which means that like whatever shape I have here is basically gonna be mapped in the same way because we're symmetrying it to the other side in the same way, right? And that is very noticeable and we want to avoid that. So whenever you have seams in the middle of an object like this, it's better to keep them unique rather than trying to optimize them. Density might be too low. It has a building arch. Yeah, it looks like you're gonna need to compensate for like a bigger texture here, right? Because the density, it might be fine. You just have to, because you're packing so much onto a single a single texture, you might have to compensate for like a higher texture resolution. Um, I'm going to dip out and get ready for bed. Have a good night. Yeah, see you, Joe. Thanks for being here. Is it okay to move the UV0 to UV1? Yep. Because UVs, if you have them as default, they will tile endlessly. Well, not endlessly, but they will repeat, well, assume endlessly. So if you move them exactly 1 unit, that unit that is like outside of your 0 to 1 space actually has the same information as your main square has. So what you basically do is, let's imagine that this is your 0 to 1 space, right? And imagine that this is like your second space. If you, let's say you have this guy, and let's say they are mirrored, then you just move this guy over here by exactly 1 unit, and there's tools for that. By exactly 1 unit, and then they're going to share the same same information. The barrier to entry to Love the Craft is easier than it ever has been, but the barrier to entry for the industry has also gotten harder. Yeah. Shifting the market. I think it's good. It puts originality and artistic approach over technical mastery. Um, that's where it gets hard to agree with, right? Because I mean, there's so many sides to this, right? In general, the industry is gonna become more industrious, right? More specialized, more niche, and hopefully, to a certain degree, it's gonna be easier to slot you out for someone with the same skill set, right? If you then compare that to like an indie company, where if we lose 25% of the team and they own like all this stuff, and then it's like, oh shit, what are we gonna do there, right? Because their skill set is so unique. So I think if you're looking for like originality and artistic approaches, like you're already targeting more the indie space more rather than the AAA space, right? Because I'm gonna sound a bit weird here, but I feel like there's almost a distinction between, I don't know how to approach this, right? But there's almost like a difference between like a true artist who has like a love for the craft and doesn't really care about like the whole system, and they just want to make like really cool shit that looks really unique. And then you have the production artist who is like suited to be like in that production environment, right? Where they are like really optimized and they know how to execute a given style in the quickest way possible, right? There's like a difference there. 4K texture with a 512 pixels per meter. Yeah, that should be okay. If you've done your calculations correctly. But yeah, thank you for this quick little update, Guillaume. Love to see the updates, and thanks for the questions. There was another quick one, I think, from Sergio. I know that I'm jumping around already. But let's see. Oh, V was actually next. So let's go with Sergio first, because honestly, this is super quick. It's just, dude, keep it going. I'm not seeing like any big stumbling blocks. Trust yourself, trust the process, keep up the great work, and just keep iterating. That's honestly all I wanted to say. There's nothing really that jumped out here. So good stuff, dude. Keep it going. Let's see. And who was next? I think it was V next. No points for this one yet. But let's see. How can I position the ramen shop and the vending machine to make the scene more alive and interesting, both compositionally and in terms of storytelling? Are there particular angles, overlaps, and spatial contrasts that help these assets complement each other, because right now the scene feels a bit sparse. I mean, it's gonna be... The first thing that I'm gonna say here is we need to find references for this, right? If you don't know what to do with like how to build up a space, that means that we lack the references to how spaces like this would look in real life, right? Or even find like sources to pull from. Because the basic question is like, how would this work in real life? Like a place that we as a person can relate to, right? Do-do-do-do. Right. Because already from that, you're probably going to see that there is going to be like a specific way that this shop would potentially be integrated within its environment, or that this vending machine would be integrated into its environment, right? Because right now, they just feel like two separate things, just like bashed together, but we need to make sure that we integrate them somehow, right? For example, what I'm just thinking about is that in my small hometown, what we had was a little corner, like a little inset underneath the building that had like a couple of vending machines, for people that wanted like a late night snack or something like that, right? So just having something that already gives that space could already be like a good idea to do, rather than just having it on the street, right? But that is obviously going to depend on what interests you. If you're going to look at like vending machines in Japan, you're going to get very different inspiration than like vending machines in like Germany, for example, right? But references is still like where we begin. Do your research, pick references, and then use that as a base. When it comes to the composition of this, there's only so much that we can do with this necessarily, right? Again, I would implore you to think about like how this would work and what this person would need from like a very logical perspective, right? So we talked about references. What might also help is, let's say you run this company. What does your day look like? Do a little bit of role playing, right? As in like, I'm the owner of this restaurant. I wake up in the morning. As soon as my workday starts, what does it look like, right? What am I doing? How do I get stuff to work? How do I do my cooking? Where do I store my ingredients? Is there a delivery that comes by? Is like all that kind of stuff. Location logic questions. Exactly. Yeah. So using those questions to get like a better grip of what you're kind of missing to like flesh out the space are gonna help you a lot, right? And then yeah, like Route One is saying, you can definitely look at Cyberpunk, which I'm assuming that you've already done loads anyway. But you can kind of use that as inspiration as to like, oh, okay. Because I can even guarantee you in Cyberpunk, there are areas where you will see a stall like this, where you can tell that they've not done the work. As I mean from like a development perspective, right? Where they just didn't have the time to make it really polished. And there's also other areas, probably busy areas around like player homes and all that kind of stuff, where there is that attention to detail, and they went further and making it better. Now we can actually have two comparison points and tell like, hey, look, what is the difference between those two, right? Why is one more set dressed than the other, and how did it do the set dressing? Could be a cool use case to do it that way, and an excuse to play the game more, if you need it. Dogtown does look pretty great, yep, but that's because that was after the first release, right? The first release was a little bit bumpy, let's say. Because even in the final game, right? Like, I bet you even now you can tell that there's still areas where they're just like, hey, look, this area is not important. We're just not going to invest time and money into this. Doesn't make sense. So It's just the nature of game development, right? But it's actually it's actually cool that you can kind of use that as like a research to be like, okay, where did they put time into it and where did they not put time into it, and then see how they compare. But yeah, I think honestly that's gonna be more helpful than anything. But I think you can already get a lot of like getting good references, figuring out the logic and what you're missing in that logic, and then try to really quickly block out like what you need and see if that already feels better. Because yeah, the scene, like you said, like the scene does feel really sparse at the moment, but that's because we came from like a massive scene and we're now trying to focus on like smaller components, right? Second is my goal is to make a small corner feel believable slice of a larger cyberpunk world grounded in realism, but distinctly futuristic. Any feedback on how to balance that tone would be super useful. Any feedback on how to balance that tone would be super helpful. I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but it's honestly going back to the first one. Like maybe even going deeper, right? Like to nail the tone of cyberpunk specifically is like you need to go to the source. Right? Where does cyberpunk come from? Like, and I'm not even talking about playing more cyberpunk, but like the thematics and maybe the original board game and maybe just the Blade Runner, all that stuff. Like, and looking further than the movies, right? Like, what was their inspiration, right? Like this futuristic vision, like really thinking about like overcrowded people because like booming birth rates and all that kind of stuff, and seeing so far into the future where like everything would be so crowded out, hyper corporatization, corporations owning everything, and this like counterculture with like the punk rockers like standing up for what they believe in, right? Like there's a lot more to go in there, but you can then look at like all those individual things and like how you can incorporate that into your environment again, right? Because this is also why you can look at games to get a feel for what cyberpunk is, but then you're getting like someone else's interpretation of cyberpunk, right? Yeah, I've done some research on the art style and the background and stuff. Yeah, but you need to go. What I'm talking about is like going deeper, right? And what are those elements that you then want to incorporate in your scene, right? If you just want to, and there's nothing wrong with this, by the way, right? I want to caveat that first. If you just want to do like, hey, look, I'm making cyberpunk and I'm doing my own thing, then it's totally fine to look at stuff in cyberpunk and just be like, hey, look, what if I just add like a couple modifications, right? Then you can almost look at cyberpunk as like your concept and add your own spin on it. But if you wanna do your own thing, right? Because you're kind of keeping it like very very broad, where my goal is to make the small corner feel like a believable slice of a larger cyberpunk world. But is that cyberpunk as in cyberpunk, or cyberpunk like the thematic of cyberpunk, right? Yep. No work this week, got COVID. Oh shit, Charlie. Hope you're gonna be fine. Take a lot of rest, dude. Yep, Mike Pondsmith's game. Yeah, like a game from the 70s or 80s or something like that, right? Lots of other sources. Yeah. Yeah, no, like, but that's the thing, right? Like I can't really give you I can't really give you anything to work with here, right? It is almost what you need to try to do is reverse engineer the way that they did it to then see how you can do the same thing but build it from the ground up, if that makes sense. So for example, what I'm thinking about in Cyberpunk, I think in the, I don't know what the district is called, like the Valentinos district, they have like these beautiful old like flats, or like brick buildings, right? Like these like older brick buildings. And what I find really cool about those is that there are a couple of them where they just added like a steel shell on top of them with like massive legs protruding in front of them, right? Chinatown or Haywood, I can't remember the district. But that by itself is a strong visual because it's literally the new iteration of the town devouring the old iteration of the town, right? That is really cool to have as a visual where like the new stuff overtook the old stuff, right? And you'll see that in a lot of like very traditional like animes, or like I'm thinking about like Akira, right? Where you can recognize the buildings, but they've been devoured by like this over in that case, like over industrialization, right? Where like pipes and steam and all that kind of stuff is like just scattered on top of them, right? So yeah, I don't know if that was helpful, but that would be good to look into, to see how you can like recreate like what they did. But yeah, definitely throw some quick blockouts in there for like assets that you've drawn from this list, right? Basically just you take all of this stuff, you combine that together, and then you come up with a list of assets that you can then turn into blockouts for your scene. And from that, you would make like a composition that is going to be interesting for storytelling. Right? As a quick little overview. Self-cleaning garbage can. Yeah, could definitely do that. Love me some Cyberpunk discussions. Yeah. Now I want to play Cyberpunk again. Oh yeah, yeah, click the affiliate link down here, you know, like I wish. Oh my god. That would be sick. Oh yeah, the vending machine is sentient. That was such a good quest line. Oh my god, I genuinely love that quest line. That was good. I didn't like the sentient weapon though. I didn't care for that one. A bit too much. Route 1 is saying can just focus on the stall itself and build the environment around it like a diorama. Yeah, I think that's the goal of this as well, right? Because I think there's nothing really wrong with this composition. It's just about like filling it out a little bit more. And then we can work with this, right? Just needs a little bit more stuff. Yeah. Thanks for sharing your work, V. It's Skippy. It is Skippy. Yeah, not Chippy. Okay, I think we're free roaming at this point, right? Are we free? Let's see. It was Mike, but unfortunately that didn't get captured. So let's go. Okay, let's go through it bit by bit. First thing here is from Alejandro. Let me see. So 2 questions are for the texturing pass. How should I go about adding surface variation without making it look too repetitive and too noisy? I wrote like a little quick thing here. It's like texturing is all about layers, and like the more layers that you can have like in a subtle way, the better it's going to be. In the beginning, there's nothing wrong about it looking generic, right? Like using generators and like all that kind of stuff. Then trying to be more specific with masks, right? So add like a couple of masks, input like a couple of different textures, see which one that work, and also have like multiple layers of the same thing. So like don't have one layer of dirt, have like 4 layers of dirts with like different colors, different masks, and different generators or whatever, right? And then when it comes to the end, you want to pick up like a bunch of hand painted stuff too. So you want to basically work from procedural to more manual as you work your way down this list, right? And that's going to give you like a really good result. I noticed this here. Abbas Kiyani, he did like an amazing workshop on our YouTube channel. If you want to check that out, he basically talks about all this stuff and does a good job about explaining like really cool, um, yeah, really cool ways of doing that. I also said here, like, think about the layers and what they're caused by as well, right? What is really important is that you're not only thinking about like, oh, it's dirt, but what kind of dirt, right? Like, has it been left on the ground? Like, has it been left underneath like your bed? Has it been left underneath like something else? You know, like, because those have like, it's all dirt, right? But it's a different kind of dirt. And that can indicate something about a prop, right? For example, sun bleach, dirt, etc., they all have different effects on the prop, right? So that's also like you can kind of see here. There's like, I mean, it's a little bit low res, but there's scratches. There's like this like weird effect happening around like the Rayman Origin sticker. There's this browning effect. There's this yellowing effect, and like all those things are all like individual different layers that you just have to build up over time. Because yeah, you have to think about like the logic of them a little bit, right? And then also you can see like areas that are going to be pressed more, right? You're going to be interacting with the top of this way more than the back of this. So you can actually see a differentiation in color there as well. Also, this looks absolutely disgusting. This looks not great. Let's see. What else did I write here? And then the other thing was about your second question is how you can achieve a clean bake. Looks like the AO bakes fine, but not for the normals. So I don't know if this is your high poly. It's kind of hard to see, but I've highlighted a couple of things. You have a bunch of shading issues, right? So you can see the faceting on the edge here, which is an issue. And you also have like some pinching that's happening here, which is gonna create some like weird normal effect. But the second most important thing, which is why you're probably looking at some like weird normal stuff happening, is because your bevels are way too small, or in some cases they're just like generally missing. For example, with this lip here, like there's not enough data to have like any sort of like normal data coming from this, right? Because that lip is so tiny that honestly, I can barely see it, like even on this image, right? So that leads me to this point where like you need to exaggerate bevels so that it can catch highlights, right? Because that's what they're supposed to be doing. For example, you can kind of see that here with this bevel where it catches like the highlight or like really nicely. But this one on top of it is like almost invisible, right? Also, another thing to highlight here is you probably don't need this inset to be in the low poly, because if we go in here, this is just like a small little inset. You're never going to see it because it's barely changing the silhouette. Whereas this one, like this one right here, is going to be way more noticeable. So that's actually good to have that in geometry, right? So you can condense those two down, and then that's going to also get rid of some of the artifacting that you have as well. Also think about your bake resolution, because it can also just be that you don't really have like enough pixels on your texture to properly capture some of the details that you're trying to bake down, right? So that comes back to my former comment on just like, hey, if you have some of this stuff, we need to have a bevel on there so that we can, again, give it a little bit more information to then be captured by our textures, right? Because let's say a really simple example here is, let's say this is a strip, right? Like a strip of like this little inset. If this translates to like a single pixel on our texture, which means that that pixel needs to be 100% aligned to our pixel grid coming from our texture, right? Because as soon as it skews a little bit, you might end up having these like weird artifacts where it's looked like there's no data, because it just gets like it just gets like it doesn't have enough data to be captured by like the textures again, right? So that might be something to look into too. A quick way to do that is just like testing it at a higher resolution, see if that helps. But usually that's why you want to like straighten your faces or shells, because then it aligns to the pixel grid in your UV, and that's going to give you like the optimal use case to avoid like any sort of like anti-aliasing and all that kind of stuff. Which is probably the last point that I'll say. Try cranking up your like your anti-aliasing settings, because that might also be helpful. Cool. Good night, Guillaume. McFall is asking, have you seen the burger? Oh, dang it. The Hamburg bunker building, a different kind of building taking over an old structure. I have not. I will have to look that up after our little gathering here. Cool. Let me get some relatively easy ones out of the way. So, Moment is going next. Moment is working on this abandoned diner. Yeah, I know. I'm hungry too. I was so sad when I said it because now I want a burger. God dang it. Okay. So, plywood time. Have a basically just like because we're talking about like the back wall here, right? Which I didn't really pay too much attention to last time, but it kind of feels like it's some generic wood and we're not really maximizing like what we can get out of it, right? What I would say, first really easy thing to do is change up the silhouette, right? Like add some breaks in there, change up the silhouette so that it's multiple boards that are just like added on top of each other. That's already gonna add a lot to the effect, and it's gonna give us like a visual separation to recognize that there's something going on, right? It's an easy fix to do. And then honestly, for plywood, have a look at what plywood looks like, because a lot of the references that I found like really quickly is like this beautiful, like splintered, like almost like layered wood that is kind of coming loose at the seams, right? And just even having this as a texture on like the frayed edges would look like really sick and give it like a better identity as well and more recognizable. So I don't think you necessarily have to go and like cut up the boards. It's just about adding a couple of boards and then doing like some like really nice texturing at the edges. I think that's it, by the way. I think that should give you like enough to work with. So it's not too much. What was this note that I did here? Oh yeah, one thing that I wanted to bring up is that it's always good, and this is more like general advice. It is always good to look for very specific types of wood, because that will give you consistency when it comes to the texturing, right? So you can kind of see that basically anything up until here looks really good, because we always have like these larger like flaps almost coming loose, right? Like it's very, very stringy. Where if you have some of this, I don't know what this would be called in like English, but it's basically just pressed wood instead of like sheets of wood. So they're gonna be fraying in like a completely different way, right? So being specific with the type of wood that you pick, I'm gonna give you consistent references as well. I thought I might need some alpha cards. You could, like this sort of stuff, like this fraying that you have, like if you add like a couple of alpha cards, and oh, actually we can make beautiful use of this. So you see this blank that goes on top of it. Oh, I love this kind of stuff. I'm cheating now. So normally you would be worried about like, hey, but if I have my normal texture and then I have like my alpha cards, if I want to keep them like relatively modular and I want to just like add them all over the place, how is that transition going to be looking like? No need to worry, because you can just add a plank on top of it and you're done with it. I love that. A little game art trick just from a reference. But yeah. Because honestly, that's the easiest thing. Just having like a couple of separate like alpha cards that you can just like stick into it and kind of give it like a bit more of an interesting silhouette. That could be fun to play around with. So yeah, that's not a bad shout if you want to do that. Hamburger, burgering. Oh my god. God, I want some hamburgers now. Okay. But yeah. Love little update. I don't know if we actually looked at that last time. Oh yeah. Yeah, I completely missed that last time actually. So the wood plank would be Geo or Alpha. Sorry, I got confused there. No, no worries. So this could be Geo is probably going to be the easiest thing to do here. So you would have like a separate plank, or maybe I'm seeing if we can reuse something. Don't think so. Yeah, in this case, it would be like a separate plank on top of it. And then that gives us something to like tuck like the alpha planes like underneath them, right? And then it gives you more freedom to do what you want. Because then what we're doing is we're basically making a kit, right? So let's say you have like one big board, you have one plank, and then you have like a bunch of like little alpha cards. And then we can just like puzzle these together, and we can make like 3 very different looking boards by just like rotating the main one, maybe not adding the plank to another one, and then just using like different alpha cards, right? Yeah. Thanks for asking that. That's a good question. But yeah, good stuff, Moment. Nice little update. Lovely to see the updates as always. Best of luck with that. Joe, let's have a look at your stuff next because I did make some notes for this. So Joe is working on a foggy forest. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the lighting. I'm trying to reach this reference, but I'm struggling to get the moonlight. Okay, cool. So we're basically talking about this effect. I think honestly, this is gonna be playing around with specific lights, but also with the fog and having to capture it in a certain way, right? So it's gonna depend on like getting some nice volumetric fog that we can scatter the light through. And then also having a light that kind of like enters it at like the right angle. What you could do is you could have a fake light that kind of just recreates this effect, right? You might get away with that. Just to emphasize it, right? Because there's nothing wrong with just like emphasizing certain areas if you want to have like a special effect, right? Or specific effect. But I think you want to be looking for volumetric because that gives you that nice like scattering through like the whole volume, right? And then the second question was for the composition. I made a couple of notes here where I'm going the opposite way that I wrote this down, but you mentioned not sure if at the moment the eye is being lit towards the building or not. I might increase the lighting around that area. So if you have a strong light source like this, maybe if you increase it like a little bit more, that is probably the easiest way of getting like your eye drawn to it, right? That's always going to be a winner for a scene like this because it's going to be a dark scene with a light source at the back of it, right? Depending on how you balance that with the fog. So this is a very quote unquote an easy scene to guide your eyes through, right? Because we have a lot of contrast happening, which is good. However, I feel that we can actually emphasize the composition a little bit more by making it a bit more interesting. Because right now, everything kind of feels just like straight. What is this actually? I'm actually not sure what that is. I think it's supposed to be a river, right? So if that is supposed to be a river, making it like way more interesting, like how the river like goes into the composition and where we are in the composition itself, and how the bridge then interacts with it is also going to be cool. Because right now everything kind of feels very straight, and also from a composition perspective, everything feels like it's sort of like added on the same height, which is which can work for a composition. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with it, but it does make for a very static composition. It makes for a very monotone composition. Where if you want to add like a little bit of more dynamics to the composition, is looking at like the rule of thirds, right? Getting that little overview, doing that really quickly, and then seeing if you can move your points of interest closer to these guys, right? And that's sort of what this quick sketch was, is okay, we're using all the elements that you had. Maybe there's like a little bridge here, like a bit closer to the foreground, and we're standing on the bank on one side, and then you kind of have like more elevation, or like a more winding path that kind of takes you to like the building itself, right? To kind of add some like interest to the whole thing. And then we can kind of play with like compositional elements, like see in the past, and then it kind of disappears for a little bit, but it's already pointing you in that direction. Yeah, I tried to make it like a bit more interesting than just everything being at like one level. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. Because yeah, it's a cool little scene though. Like I like the vibes and the mood that you want to go for. Just from like a composition perspective, like we can do some more interesting stuff, like making more effective use of foreground, middle ground, and background as well, right? Because right now everything kind of feels like it's happening on the middle ground. There's no background, and the foreground is kind of just like this. I mean, it's early stages still, but like this mess of just like green stuff where I can't really see what I'm supposed to be seeing. So making sure that there's like it translates a little bit better, that could be very helpful. Right, and then I think Omar was here before. I've not had a chance to look at this, but it's cool to be having a look at this stuff. Let's have a look, Omar. Lost cash bar. I'm trying to depict an important scene where two figures arrive to the shrine and converse maybe before going in. The camel on the right could suggest the way they came to the spot from the city in the background. The camel? Oh my god, I barely saw these guys. So there is like a lot going on already in this scene, right? It's very chaotic in the way that it's structured compared to like the previous scene in this series, where it was, oh, even comparing it to like your older work. Let me get this screenshot up here. So no, no, it's just a big image. Okay. From just like a color perspective, it was a way more simple scene, right? There was green happening and red, so it was like more simple. Where like here, there's a lot of contrast, a lot of different colors, like a lot of shapes. Like it's a more chaotic scene. I feel like it would be good to have more airs of rest. Um, Probably not what you were asking for, but we're gonna get there. So primarily in colors, I think that's the main issue currently. But then also potentially um, shapes potentially. But I think it's primarily colors though. Maybe not shapes, like maybe contrast between areas. Um, Let's see. What was your question again? Got derailed there for a second. The camels on the right could suggest the way that they came to the spot from the city in the background, just putting clues here and there. That could be interesting. I would then put them in a way where we can clearly kind of see like a path leading up here. Have like the camels like on the path facing towards those people, right? Because now it feels like they're going back to town, not like they came from town, right? So we could almost use them as like a compositional element, right? So that we kind of use like the path at first. So there's gonna be like a little trail that's gonna come up here. Cool. That is an awful looking trail, but hey, we're gonna go with it. So we have like the camels facing the people. We have the road coming from the town. It doesn't have to be like, I don't like the way that it's going super straight, right? So I'm always leaning towards like, hey, look, um, something more like this, right? Where we can kind of see like, oh, this is like the main path, but then there's like a side thing happening. Maybe this is too close to the edge, but you get what I mean. Like a bit more of a dramatic thing. But I want to see more of the path, like as it comes up here. Because we want to signal like, hey, look, this is the road that they took, right? So we can kind of follow it in like a very visual manner. And then having the camels face that way, and then we're kind of building the scene up to be like, hey, look, starting point in the distance. This is cool. We got this city in the distance. And you kind of follow like whoop, the path all the way up here to like these people standing here. I think that's a good like 1, 2, 3 kind of sequence, right? Because even if you start here, it's like, ooh, what are these people doing? Oh, okay, they came with camels. Oh, and those camels came from the city, right? It's like we can kind of follow like a visual story that's happening. Where right now, the way that everything is kind of laid out kind of feels like it's not necessarily that purposeful yet. The scene looks great, like an art piece. Yeah. Oh yeah, I do like it visually. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I want to dive into some of the concept art in a little bit as well. But your second question is there too much going on? My lighting is purposely kind of diffused and foggy, but I'm not sure if an outside eye would help me say that it's just too flat. I don't. I mean, your lighting is kind of what you want to do with it yourself, right? Like, I feel like maybe it's a bit too much. It almost feels like it's not real. As in like it's a dream sequence of stuff. Like I'm thinking about like Far Cry 5 dream sequences where you had like the one cold lady that always like drugged you and you woke up in this weird little fever dream. That's kind of what it feels like to me. It doesn't feel real. Because what I would expect from like especially such a like an arid place, I would not expect to see so much moisture in the air, right? Because that is basically what looks like to be happening here. Like blue diffuse sky kind of hints to me at like a very tropical kind of moisture based kind of fog, right? So that might be something to take into consideration. But then I also don't really want to make it like a sandstorm because then you don't have like the nice, beautiful contrasting colors. But yeah, it's a difficult one. I also feel like it's also your style, right? Yeah, exactly. Like you always lean more towards like hallucinogen vibes. I mean, this is the thing, right? I don't necessarily want to pull you away from that because that is your thing, right? And if you're like, hey, look, I like this, You know, I'm just gonna go with it. Like, I would actually be totally fine with keeping the atmosphere, but then still thinking about like the compositional stuff that we said earlier, right? I'm biased with the weather. The city in the far looks very foggy and arid at the same time. It looks like this in the morning. Oh, sorry, the city I am from is very foggy and arid at the same time. It looks like this in the morning. Yeah, maybe that's also my lack of like visuals, right? Maybe that's where we're bumping into my lack of references for this kind of stuff. Like, I'm mostly going from, I'm mostly going for like some of this stuff, right? So yeah, maybe that's where my lack of the visuals and how this would look like in real life kind of comes from. I was gonna say, I found this little painting. I found that so interesting, just in terms of like there is like separation in color, but if you really look at like all the chaos that's going down here, it kind of gets like somewhat difficult to decipher, right? So yeah, I don't know. I just found that like really interesting when I was looking at like these traditional paintings and like trying to like reverse engineer them. Let's see. North African forts can have very repetitive patterns. How would you break them up? Oh, but would you break it up for more art's sake? I don't think so. Because the way that I'm thinking about it is from more like an artistic perspective, right? Where you have a lot of very organic, natural, curvy shapes going on. And then you have like the very sterile, like blocky buildings going on, right? So there's like a beautiful shape contrast happening there. So I don't really think that you need to break it up all that much necessarily. I don't think that's the thing that I'm really concerned about. So yeah. Mateo was saying, I like the green and the red contrast in the central reference. Yeah, it's very vibrant here, right? Where you have like the sandstone kind of going into the buildings and then the farms right next to it. Very, very evocative, like color scheme, right? Like even this, like just the mountains and like the palm trees in the foreground, like it's so vibrant, so contrasty. I like it. Yeah. So what do we take away from this, right? Like it's more to me, it's more about getting the composition fixed, or like more intuitive to understand the composition, and like really highlighting what the story is about, right? And like all the weather stuff, like that is almost like secondary, right? Because you can kind of keep that as like your own like artistic interpretation, right? Which I honestly don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's kind of cool. But we can still kind of fix it from like how it reads a little bit better. We can definitely fix that up a little bit more. Yeah, this is super cool, dude. I like seeing your stuff, Omar. I mean, that was no surprise, right? Like I've said that before. It's always cool to look at like what you're doing and like how you're doing things and experimenting, and it's always cool to see this stuff. Yeah. Thanks for sharing it as well with the rest of us too. I appreciate it. And then the last one for today is Just Max. The two questions for Just Max. Let's see. Omar saying, thanks a lot. Always love your insights. Yeah, it's always interesting. Like I feel, I don't know if this is like a weird thing to say, but I don't really feel like we're talking about necessarily like industry appropriate stuff. Let me explain that better. Like I feel like the way that we talk about art is more on like pure artistry rather than, hey, we need to do this to get like on the next commercial project, you know? Like less production heavy and more like artistic, more nebulous, which is always like really interesting to see. Just Max, last one for today. Thank you for being here, and thank you for becoming a member as well. I see that you're new to the community, so lovely to have you. Two questions for you today. What here is working and what is not working? Um, You're also saying here's an incredibly ugly first try to play around with the lighting, I think, right? Lack a pop of color. I've experimented with different lighting setups, but the scene was never built with the idea to have that pop, so it's really hard to try and add it as an afterthought. I'm gonna make like a controversial suggestion. To be fair, I do like where this is going. We're talking about a color pop. This looks really good. But I also don't think that you necessarily need to add a color pop if that is not what the scene was intended to be built around, right? Because that almost feels like the conversation that me and Omar, for example, just had, where it's more about like, hey, this is my interpretation, and then someone else might be like, hey, look, I want more color, like I want to be signaling to the player that like here's where they go or something like that, right? Sometimes you just don't want to do that to a scene necessarily. So I get where they're coming from, but it's sometimes it's difficult to agree with that. Or just like, hey, just add a pop of color. Let's see, let me get some context. I'm a big fan of monochromatic scenes or where one color is heavily dominant. Yeah, exactly. So I think if that is what you lean towards, I don't think you need to change it necessarily, right? I've experimented with different lighting setups, but the scene was never built with the idea. So just this feedback, I added bits and pieces of red contrasting dressing. Okay. Oh, kind of like this stuff, right? Yeah, you kind of have like some books and pillowcases and the Marlboro like packaging. I mean, it's okay. I like your interpretation of like, hey, look, like I'm getting this feedback and I'm gonna interpret this in this way, and then I'm gonna make it yeah, I'm gonna make it in this way, but again, I don't necessarily think that it necessarily needs it. Slate is heading off. Thank you for the feedback. Yeah, no worries, Slate, and thanks for being here as well, all the way to the end. What here is working or not working? What would you add and remove? That's a very broad question. Because I think a lot in this scene is already working really, really well. And again, I can see where the pop of color comment is coming from, but I don't really mind having a scene that just looks like this. I think having a play with the night lighting is definitely a good shout though. Because I feel like this is like way more interesting already than this. So what we can kind of learn from that is just having like a little bit of a color contrast, right? Maybe not like a color pop, but maybe a little bit of color contrast. I'm gonna see if I can do something like really quick here. If we were to, oh, not soft proof. I don't want to be doing that. Let me see. Lens filter. Okay. We're going to be seeing it. So your dominant color in this scene was orange, right? So I'm just going to see if we can chuck in like a little bit of contrast in here. We're going to do that in this way. Let's see. It's almost like mimicking what's happening in the night lighting, so not generally like too big of a fan of it, but oh, maybe white instead. It's almost like because your color palette is like pretty subtle, right? This is work from Just Max. So it's called Detective Office. But what I'm trying to do here is I'm almost trying to infuse like the same sort of like color contrast that you have here, but almost Well, no, it's actually the same. Like blue on the outer edges. And seeing what we can do here. We don't need to add that extra vignette. Maybe. Let's see. Yeah, to be fair, like this is also going to look like way better if you do it in engine compared to what I'm doing here, right? Because that is almost like I want to introduce like some colder colors in some of the corners, right? So that we get like this nice light coming in and then it bounces around and kind of gets colder because it interacts with like all these cold objects in the room, right? So trying to kind of mimic that effect. That could be interesting. Maybe that's what the previous person was talking about as well when it comes to color pop, right? So maybe a little bit like a very subtle color contrast. Maybe fill the main room with yellow and blaze the blue light behind the door. I don't know. That could also be an option. That is almost what's happening here, right? Like it's a more, but like the thing that I don't necessarily want to destroy with my feedback, right? Not with your point that you made, is I don't want to destroy like how subtle the variation is. But like this is more harsh, right? Like we can have more freedom here. Like this one feels like pretty subtle in the way that it's set up. But yeah, it's almost like the same thing here, right? So like fill the main room with yellow and then place like a blue light here. I think it works really well in this kind of setup. Get that color contrast going. It's really good. But you were asking what here is working and what is not working. I think what is not necessarily working is like how I was gonna say how monochromatic this is, but I honestly think that having both of them is actually quite cool. So again, like there's no like there's nothing bad about having a monochromatic scene, right? Or like just leaning into like the choices that you really love. And I think that's exactly what you're doing. Maybe adding a little bit of solid color contrast could be helpful, but you don't want to destroy necessarily what you already have, right? And then you can do something more stereotypical here if you wanted to. And I think this is great. So I don't think a lot is not working, honestly. It would honestly, if I could give you one advice, is it's almost talk to, at this point, talk to a lighting artist. Because they're gonna be way more helpful than I am when it comes to like really nailing the lighting, right? That would be like my suggestion here. Because obviously I don't do this as a profession, so my talk on this is gonna be weak. But it seems like you need a person with like a lot of professional experience in this. And then the second question is, how differently would you like this scene to have some color play? So we kind of did like a little bit of a demonstration here, but honestly, I love this shot, the way that it's already going. I think this is the way that I would personally set this up as well. The only thing that I would probably have a look at is right now, like this cone of light is super focused on the desk only, right? I would honestly play around with having it like filter just a little bit out on this scene as well. Just a little bit. So that we get like a little bit more of a highlight of some of the stuff that's happening here potentially. But that's honestly the only thing that I can say. Just let the light filter out just a little bit more from the desk. Yeah. The yellow rig light is not meant to reflect from the lens like that. Oh yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah. Not too much to say from my side, honestly. Like, if you want to get some really solid advice, talk to a lighting artist. They're going to be helpful. They're going to be way more helpful than I am. Yeah. Oh, there's like a third question, which maybe I might be more helpful with. So this is more of a simpler question, like how would you place the rug? Oh, no rug on the first version. No, I like the rug. Definitely keep the rug. So this one is out of the running. This version. This version is by far my favorite. The reasons for that being is that in this one, it's kind of too aligned with the desk, and it feels like it's almost too perfect. Especially for like how chaotic the rest of the scene is. So this is almost like too neat for this chaos, right? And this one just has like this weird little tangent happening here where it kind of just disappears. I don't really like that. So that's why this one is my favorite, because we can kind of see like the whole thing clearly. It kind of creates like this beautiful island. That's why that one is my favorite. So yeah. Cool little choices. I like it. But yeah, this is awesome work, Just Max. Really cool stuff. Lots of attention to detail. And just like great use of assets as well. You know, like really making the most out of like a relatively low amount of assets. Just being really cool with it. Tim, have you watched the Game World Art YouTube channel? He walks around different games and talks about environment art. No, I have not. That was actually like an idea that I wanted to do for the longest time, but never really got to it. Is that the person? I've seen some people share like his breakdowns of The Last of Us. Is that person? Or not? Or is that a completely different person? Doo-doo-doo. Don't think so. Okay, I might be having the wrong person in mind then. Recently you did Death Stranding and Kingdom Come Deliverance. Okay, I'll need to give it a look then. I've seen a guy recently who's been talking about The Last of Us. Quite enjoyed those videos. Yeah. I have not watched those either, but yeah, I got some free time coming up, so I'm gonna be catching up with all that stuff. Let's see. Yeah, thanks everyone for posting. Let me switch it on up. Yes. A little bit later than expected. But hey, we did good. We did good. Yeah, I'll need to check all those like videos out. I've seen a lot of people share them, so I've been quite curious for a while about them. So yeah, maybe in a couple of games, a couple of weeks. Get him some watch. No worries. He also did a series on in-game rivers, which was like a niche subject. Ooh, okay. Okay. I'll need to check that out. What was it called again? Game World Art. I'd be curious, is it a dev that does it? Or is it just like a very passionate gamer that's doing it? I'm assuming he's a dev, right? He worked for Rockstar before. Oh, okay. Got it. Got it. That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. I need to check that out then. Be curious what he's saying. What he be saying about it. Do do do. Cool. Yeah, thanks for that suggestion. And also thanks everyone for being here. I'm not gonna make this any longer than it needs to be. I appreciate you all so much for being here. I'm gonna wish you all a nice evening. I'm gonna chill out for a little bit and then I'll post all the overpaints for tonight in everyone's little tab. With that being said, I'm out of here for tonight and we'll see each other soon. Bye. Oh my god, McFal Megabunk is so good.